Let's now continue with the new episode of the wonderful anime slime Rimuro Season 3. The anime begins with Roro says that when he participated in the Alps, he defeated the Climon and was officially named as a demon, king thus becoming part of the OS Lord Octagram Demons of the 8 Stars. And he says that Lion and Valentine left as soon as the conference ended. Shortly after that, Guy organized a dinner for those who stayed. And when he looks at the food, he doesn't feel so firm about this tiger meat. But when he eats Rimuru, it becomes completely amazed, saying that the meat falls apart on the tongue and the sauce covers it very well. He already calls Rafael to learn the recipe, and when he looks to the side, he realizes that maybe he doesn't need to worry about good manners while they are there, and when he sees Mylan almost drinking something alcoholic. He asks her to stop, but she says that that is just the reward for pretending to be manipulated. And then one of them asks why she hasn't stopped pretending to be manipulated yet, because Cayman never opened up to who she was manipulating. But she says, which in fact it was a good chance to fight with Himuro, but he doesn't even give her any idea about her talk, saying that she is not old enough to drink that. But she says that he is being mean. After all, she is the oldest demon lord there. Despite her appearance, Takes Loli's car is 800 years old, so everyone starts praising the cognate they are drinking. And when they talk about Valentine, they think that she would definitely like to drink that. So Himuro thinks that there were a lot of things he wanted to ask her. But how did he left? Then Rafael talks to him, saying that he managed to analyze all the dishes from that meal, saying that now they can recreate the complete banquet, and in addition to getting some of the best dishes in the world, the Alper ended without many problems, and with that he returned to Tempest. So the city was very calm with everyone living their daily lives. But when they see Roro, they all make a corridor kneeling in front of him, and Hero in turn is embarrassed, asking if they rehearsed for this in this rigor, and Diablo go to him to salute him for having succeeded come back from the banquet in full. But the first thing Roro asks is what Diablo is doing there, but Rigard asks him to calm down. After all, he must be exhausted, and after they go to rest, someone knocks on the door wanting to talk to Roro, and one of the goblins brings pudding Damata to them. And she says that even though she is not that good in the kitchen, she is improving to please them all in the meantime. Veldora asks if she also brought it for him, and she says that she certainly separated his share. But Diablo also gives her another portion, saying that this is payment for their agreement. Then Rimuro asks if Diablo wouldn't eat, but he says that this is payment for the information he gave him and connecting the dots. He then looks at Veldora and he tries to hide it, and Roro finally understands how Diablo knew everything that was decided in the warehouse. He immediately asks about the desserts he would have sold, and ends up agreeing that there were 3, but Roro is curious. After all, Veldora doesn't even need to eat, but Veldora asks him not to confuse things, because it's not a question of whether he needs it or not, he wants to eat. He says that besides, Rimuro doesn't need to eat either. But even so, he's eating it. Diablo remembers that Exio was accompanying Rimuro during that meeting, she says. Yes, she proved that Rimuro doesn't need him while he had her, and Sean leaves it aside, asking if he managed to complete the task that Rimuro gave him. He just laughs, saying that he completed it perfectly. But Ruro says he can't understand how he managed to come back at such exact time. But Diablo says he was taking care of other things. But Veldora contacted him and advised him to return, and with that Veldora starts to tremble and wants to leave. But Roro holds him back, giving him a rather terrifying massage. So he shouts, telling the dragon not to disturb the work of others. And so he takes the pudding from his hand, saying that there are no sweets for Veldora from now on. And then he tells Haruna that Veldora is going to be without dessert for a while, and with that, Veldora starts calling Rimuro cruel. And then he is all cowered in a corner, and Himuro asks Diablo if it's not a problem that he's wasting time there, and Shin even makes fun of him, saying that there's nothing better for a butler than serving tea, but Diablo says he doesn't need that. After all, his informant is already acting for him. He says that to begin with. He transformed, they return to their original form, and he says he did it because it was inconvenient to leave them with pieces of meat, and Ruro wonders what he's talking about. But he soon remembers this subject, and Diablo says that Sean really is a troublemaker. While looking to a box full of pieces of people, he says that even healing magic won't work for those people. So he's going to have to take somewhat drastic measures and ask them to hold on, and after a session of a lot of screaming, one of those in the other carriage wonders. Those three arrived in one piece, but one of them says that they weren't in one piece since they left. So while one of them starts to thank Diablo, he talks to the other wanting to fix him too, but the same man tells him to fix the king. First, him and Diablo remembers him being Hezin, one of the prisoners. He tells the prisoner that he must know that asking him for a favor has a very high price, and the prisoner in turn remembers him saying that he is nor one of the 7 primordial demons. But he says that the scariest thing is that this demon serves someone, and he remembers Himuro talking to Sean, realizing that he is a demon lord who has a hidden power that, although fleeting, surpasses imagination. And he says that at that moment he ended up realizing that the kingdom of FMF awakened a sleeping lion, and soon after Reimer left, he met Shin's wrath. So the prisoner starts asking Diablo to accept him as his lowest-ranking servant, in which he starts trying to bargain, trying to ask for the life of their king, and so Diablo even accepts. But he says that he will no longer tolerate any more respect towards Himuro-sama, and he says that if he notices any kind of hostility towards Rimuru, not only will the king's life end, but he will see the breath of life disappear from the land of Mur itself. So he accepts swearing, total loyalty, and the bishop, who was there with them, also accepts this, and the king, who is in pieces, starts to remember Sean scolding him, because of them Roro's hand was soiled with human blood. He realizes that Heisen's decision was probably the right one, and he himself speaks like the last king of Ovi, who swears to cooperate in any way to stay on Diablo's side, and Diablo says that as long as he obeys him, he will treat him well. After all, with his unique tempting ability, no one can betray him. He doesn't start calling Alo asking if the prisoners are alive. He tells him not to worry. After all, the mission of taking over a country is trivial compared to everything else, and when he arrives at the palace, they notice that no magic can bring the king back, and they ask what is happening, and Shogo says that to protect the king, he cooperated with a great hero to escape, and not even that, he says that it is not Shogo but Rising, and everyone starts asking various things about what would have happened until someone asks everyone to calm down and first listen to what Ryan has to say. Then he speaks. Everyone starts to ask if they all disappeared, and if it would be true, and with that, he says that his army's battle against the monsters has awakened a sleeping dragon. But they say that the Holy Church of the West said that the dragon was destroyed, and Ryan says that it really was destroyed. But even so, the concept of the dragon does not die. He says that the dragon is simply reborn in another place in the world, and he says who didn't expect him to return so soon, or that a place would appear so close to them. And he says that with Veldora's return, all the knights and monsters in that area disappeared. He says that they were the only ones to return. So Yam enters the room, but one of them starts asking who let these commoners enter the room. But Ryan says that they were the ones who saved them, and so the Archbishop asks to be able to explain what happened, and he says that when the armies met the battle, that Clody was very intense, and he says that they had a numerical advantage, but the monsters knew the region better than them, and because of this, many of their men were lost. He says that the sea that followed must have been the key to Vora's resurrection. So with the destruction of the dragon, they begin to invent a story that someone stopped in front of them to save them, that someone was the leader of the monsters, Himuro-sama. They keep inventing a story, putting Himuro as if he were a hero who saved them all, and then asks if Himuro managed to talk to the dragon. They say that having even the slightest contact with the dragon's strong magic is death for almost every type of living organism. He says that, as he should know, Rimuro is the leader of all the moans in the forest. He swears, but they ask you if it wasn't the false title that he himself gave to be, and with that Ryan starts to tremble. After all, Diablo is there listening to everything. He says that certainly not. After all, he himself saw the city of monsters, and he says that it was certainly truly worthy of being called of capital of a nation. And he says that even the Dryads, the guardians of the great Jurassic forest, serve him, and he says that it was through the Adrad that Himuro managed to negotiate with Veldora. So they realize that he controls even the Dryads. They say they are so powerful. Surely they won't want to have him as an enemy. So Yom asks him to calm down. And after all, he worked with Heimer when he defeated the Lorder. Then he says that Heimer is very friendly and wants to live in harmony with humans. So he starts saying that he can serve as a mediator and convey your demands to him. Masum says he is friendly in normal situations, but not now. After all, they declared war on Heimer's nation. And he says that that was definitely a bad idea. Some of Hamuro's friends died because of it. However, that same annoying guy starts to say that if he has influence with Roro, he must fulfill their purposes. He says that it is his duty as a great hero to mediate for them, and in the meantime, Diablo is pissed off after them. But the man starts to say that they sent people from another world to make a mess in their house. He went there to try to make peace and fix the SNTS7ZZ. And they did, and the man even tries to continue arguing, but Risen ends up freezing him, saying that he has no idea about what they went through. Then, they were straight to the point that everything Yom said is true. They were defeated, and the only survivors were the three of them, and the king was like that after finding the Vidora particles. And they are in shock with this discovery. And without having a lot to do, they end up agreeing with Yom, and Diablo says that this was a very wise decision and now committed. He is going to free the king of this nation, and they ask who he is while threatening him. He ends up saying that he is Rimuro's butler. This, while throws a healing potion on the king. They ask what that is, and he says that it is one of his nation's specialties, the best healing potion the world has ever seen. And after healing the king, he says that he has a hero message for this nation, and he says that in a week, representatives of our nations will come together on this land to discuss peace. And he says that he will give you options, option 1 being the king, abdicating the throne, and you pay compensation, option 2. You surrender to our nation and become a vassal state in option 3. The war continues, and Diablo says these are the options he wants to know. The answer in a week, but the nobles start saying that a week is too little time. But Diablo says that it doesn't matter. After all, their problems don't interest Rimuro. And he also tells them not to try any tricks if they don't respond for a week. It means that the war continues, and with it they understood the message well, and Diablo tells Roro that that's what he asks if he showed them that, and he deduces that that was the best way to intimidate them. He says that as compensation he asked for 10,000 stellar gold coins, and Roro asks if he's not asking for too much, but Diablo says he gave 3 choices to them, being that continuing the war is impossible, given that his army was destroyed, and it is obvious that his nobles are opposed to Poro becoming the vassal state. So he says that there is only one choice left for them, and that would be to negotiate. Or suggests that they pay 10 years, or if they don't, try other terms. But Diablo says that the kingdom of FMF will have no choice but to accept his terms. But they will try to place the blame on third states, and after all this plan, he will end up not being able to use the currency, because Estellaire gold coins cannot be accepted due to their exorbitant value, and the third party who will be held responsible will probably be the king now that his royal knights are gone, is to join Holmes' faction and let him control everything. So Diablo says that his deduction is completely correct, and he says that they just need to lend some forces to Yom, and Roro asks if that would work. After all, the next king could end up joining forces with the neighboring nations, but he says that the neighboring nations are busy gathering their own influence. So that wouldn't happen. But even if it happens, Diablo says he will take care of it personally, and Roro says that this is excellent and will leave everything up to him, telling him to get in touch. If it happens something, and Diablo is very happy with it, and morally a lot happened, and I'm sure this season is going to be very good. I hope there are 25 episodes, and I want to see a lot of Decenfriol, and I want to see how far he goes. So if you want more episodes, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll stay here. I'll see you in the next video. Today's episode starts with Fatman being angry and asking his friends how this happened. The girl with the yellow moon explains to him that her connection with Clayman was cut off, and she no longer feels the spirit of the man she considered her son. This is the true death. Then the little girl cries, and their leader tells Fatman that it was his mistake. He underestimated the demon lords and should have acted more cautiously. He tells Laplace that if he's going to speak like that, then he's the one who suggested it and never expected things to end this way. The little masked girl tells them that Valentine is the demon lord who used to be a pawn even to the president, and she's very surprised that he defeated him. Fatman reacts strongly to Laplace's words and tells him that Valentine died because he was arrogant and ignored warnings despite being weak. Fatman gets enraged and prepares to fight, but the girl with yellow hair orders them to stop and tells them that everyone is sad like them. The president tells Laplace that since he hired him, he prefers him to call him by his title. Fatman then apologizes to Laplace, who tells them that they will look foolish if their secret is revealed. The girl with yellow hair says she doesn't know what happened at the scene, but based on Valentine's statement, there's no doubt Clayman died. However, the situation turns chaotic. Later, they all sit together, and the leader tells them they've lost everything Clayman entrusted to them. The bases, the army, the funds, the treasures, everything. It's a great loss. The little masked girl reassures them that even if the Demon Lord killed Clayman, the stronghold is safe. The army was destroyed, but they can still make a comeback. The leader explains that's why he summoned them here. The girl with yellow hair reveals that the base entrusted by Clayman was destroyed between day and night, and unbelievably, that Gel only sent a few of its followers. Fatman asks her if all the magicians they saw on that battlefield weren't at their full power. The girl informs them that the GL used the battlefield as bait, and its real strategy was to attack their stronghold. This prompts them to reconsider their future plans. The president tells them they need to be patient if they want to achieve their goal of world domination because they allowed themselves to be slightly deceived. He refuses to surrender and accept defeat, vowing to do something in retaliation against the Gel for taking everything from Clayman. Fatman asks him what he plans to do, and the president smiles, saying he's thinking of scheming against. The scene shifts to the Holy Empire of Lubelius, where we see Hinata walking through the city, talking to herself. She says that this country has achieved true equality by leaving administrative matters to its people, and the true identity of that administration is Luminous. Luminous Valentine is the demon lord she lost to, as her way of dealing with things was too lenient. She can't rely on her too much, or she'll lose herself. The only thing she can rely on in this world is her strength, which she found. She remembers the battlefield where the monster attacked the guards, and they killed it. When she joined the Western Holy Church, she became a Holy Knight within a year and became the commander of the Holy Knights within 2 years. But as she rose in rank, she gradually realized the true nature of the church. Emperor Lubelius is actually a vampire named Louis, the twin brother of the demon Lord Roy Valentine. This means that if there was a vampire controlling humans, it was Louis. We see Hinata fighting him in the past and succeeding in killing one of the villains. Then Luminous Sama approaches and tells her she won't allow them to die and leave her alone. She uses her magic to heal the villains and then approaches Hinata, questioning what gives a weakling like her the right to kill her followers and judge her actions, whether they are evil or good. So justice doesn't satisfy those with free will. She then grants her a week in her human form, confident that she can defeat her trusted servants. She's sure she can overcome the trial of the 7 celestial crimes, and when she does, she'll face her seriously. Hinata tells us she succeeded in the trial and confronted Luminous again, but she lost and surrendered to her. Luminous Sama and the other vampires don't necessarily kill humans to let them live, but take a little bit of blood and feed on the energy of life. The higher-ranked ones among them can live forever without doing that. However, Luminous Sama prevents the vampires from taking large amounts of life energy. So the system and integrity in this country have lasted to an unparalleled degree in the rest of the Western country. She specifically mentions that's why she must protect Luminous Sama, all for the sake of protecting this noble land. Hinata then arrives at the palace and meets Louis, who tells her that his brother died last night. An attendant informs her that someone sneaked in and killed Roy, who had returned from his village, along with the Boogeras, who then fled. They talk to her about Roy, explaining that he wasn't a weak man, but very strong, hence being called the Demon Lord. They tell her that even if it was a fake title, it means that Clown was stronger than the Demon Lord himself. She dismisses his death, as long as Luminous Sama is safe. However, the other person tells her there is a big problem. They sent Roy to unsettle them as a threat, but unfortunately he died and couldn't endure it. This could lead to our followers losing faith and breaking their psyche, so their morale might be very low. She also hears that the Great Jura Forest remains stable, despite the return of the storm dragon Veldora. Hinata says she doesn't know the story of the evil dragon, but the forest is stable because she allowed the gel called Rimuro to escape. Then she remembered what happened before that. The other person said it seems true that the army of the Falmouth Kingdom has been completely destroyed. Their opponent must be very strong. Hinata replied that the moment she held him within the sacred lands was probably the best opportunity for her to kill him. The servant then asked her if she went easy on him after they came from the same place. Hinata said, "Of course not. Luminous Sama's goals don't align with that gel. If we try to ignore it and eliminate that city, allowing that city to continue expanding at its current rate, it could move and wake up again." The other person replied that they want to ensure a supportive victory in the upcoming Great Tenma War. For this reason, they shouldn't rush too much. He also informed her that it's likely the Western countries will unite to face the new threat that emerged in the Great Jura Forest. With Roy's death, it's certain that he will be the common enemy of humanity as a whole. "Don't you agree, Hinata?" she said. "I doubt things will go so smoothly." Then Hinata speaks to herself, saying that stability and peace in the Great Jura Forest are good and might be all they need to coexist with humans. However, there is something important. The merchant from the eastern part of the country, who provided her with information, had promised to meet her again last night. Was that merchant trying to exploit her? Maybe not killing Rimuro was the right move. The other person told her that everything will become clear later. So we must wait and see what's coming. They also need to wait for Luminous Sama. She asked if he would inform her about her brother's death. The other person said he must inform her even if the shock is severe for her. But he's heartless and doesn't feel sadness. His heart is very tough. Hinata looks at him with a surprised look from his words. Then the scene shifts to the next day after Luminous Sama arrived and learned about the death. She was very saddened. Afterward, she sat on the throne and talked to them about the evil dragon Veldora. His vision had been repeatedly blocked, so she couldn't reach the place quickly. Hinata apologized to her for breaking in to kill Roy, but Luminous, the Demon Lord, told her not to apologize, as she's the one who should bear full responsibility. Emperor Louis told Hinata not to blame herself. Then Hinata asks, "What should we do about the new Demon Lord Rimuru?" Luminous Sama replies, "Our only option is to leave him be. Fortunately, he hasn't officially allied with the atheist." Hinata then argues that the city and roads built by those monsters might hasten the advancement of the angels, and it would be unwise to antagonize Demon Lord Rimuru and the Storm Dragon Veldora. She warns that if they draw attention to themselves, they might become targets for aerial pests instead. Demon Lord Rimuru interjects, "There's no point in worrying about it now. The heavenly edicts that label monsters as the common enemy of humanity will be violated by their city's existence in general." Louis suggests making him complicit with us as an evil demon lord. However, Demon Lord Rimuru says that's impossible. He states that he wants to build a country where he can enjoy life and has proudly announced that he will protect humans because he needs their cooperation. He also declared that anyone who hinders that, whether human, demon lord, or the Holy Church, is his enemy. He adds that without his relationship with humans, they wouldn't have used Louis's idea. Hinata concludes that all they can do now is to continue monitoring the situation cautiously and follow the usual procedure. They should only convey the truth to their followers, informing them that the Storm Dragon Veldora has returned. Louis asks about what to do regarding Demon Lord Rimuru, to which Luminous Sama suggests that Rimuru might be worthy of attempting political negotiations with him, which would be the best way to handle the Western country's issue discreetly. Hinata's asked if this plan suits her, or if it will lead to permanent resentment. She admits she's still a bit resentful since she tried to kill Rimuru, but doubts Rimuru is foolish enough to make her his enemy. She assures them she'll handle the situation as best as she can. In another scene, the governor informs them that the Falmouth Kingdom will accept Tempest terms and pay compensation for the war, amounting to 10,000 celestial gold pieces, surprising everyone with the enormous sum. One person remarks that this amount equals 1,000,000 gold coins, while another adamantly refuses, stating that they can't afford such a sum, even if they emptied the state treasury. Someone else insists on resisting intensely until the end. The Western Holy Church won't sit idly by if Voldora is involved, and Hinata the Beautiful will likely intervene as well. Another suggests that the royal family should pay the compensations, refusing to yield to the monster's demands. It's a person wearing a purple cloak. The king's brother questions whether a proud king like him would admit defeat so easily. The king responds that their pride means nothing against such a formidable tyrant. His brother warns him that if he intends to survive, he must pay the compensations and relinquish the throne. Failing that, their only other options are becoming a vassal state or resuming the war. He emphasizes the dire consequences of their nation falling. This deeply saddens the brother, who laments surrendering to a monster leader without a fight as a severe loss and humiliation. One of the attendees asks for permission and raises his hands to speak, stating that he received an important message this morning of utmost importance. He wishes to read it aloud, as it concerns the recent announcement from the Kingdom of Blumond. The letter states that the Kingdom of Blumond will support Tempest and condemns the dispatch of soldiers by the Falmouth Kingdom. This alarms one of the attendees because Blumond is a small country daring to speak out like this. Another remarks that it's not a problem if it's just this one state, but they'll be in trouble if the armed Durgan state also takes action. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a hurried guard who informs them of an urgent message from the guild. Rimuru, the monster ruling over the Great Jura Forest, has declared himself a demon lord. Everyone is shocked by this news, with some attendees expressing that the demon lords won't stay silent about such a development. And Rimuru, the novice demon lord, is about to realize how terrifying the demon lords can be. Another person suggests that the demon lords might even help us in defeating him. Suddenly, another guard enters to inform them that there are rumors spreading that the demon lord Clayman was killed by Rimuru. And not only that, but Carrion and Frey have relinquished their titles as demon lords and pledged allegiance to Milam, the demon lord. The 8 demon lords now call themselves the Octagram. Everyone is shocked by this news. The king informs them that Voldora is not the only threat they face. The monster known as Rimuru poses an even greater threat. He admits that it was his mistake due to greed. Even if he had done it for his kingdom, he would have abdicated the throne. He reveals that he will recommend Edward as his successor, surprising the attendees as Prince Edgar should be the one to ascend the throne. The king warns them of turbulent times ahead, as Edgar is still young, and it will be difficult for him to overcome what's coming. Thus, the great historical kingdom of Falmouth and the Jura Federation enter into an agreement to end hostilities. This officially means that Falmouth has recognized Tempest as a state. And here, our second episode concludes. Stay tuned for more thrilling episodes, but please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. After returning from Clayman's castle, the scene cuts to Shay meeting Ruru, who asks her where one can find Hakuro. Ruru discovers that she is having Hakuro clean up after her. When she says that he is still in the castle because he had to work to take care of, he is informed by Benny Maru that he is collaborating with Gel to look into Clayman's castle, distribute the war booty, and manage the inmates. Then Ruru queries Benny Maru. The commander asks Benny Maru if it's all right for him to be here as he is supposed to, and he responds that he didn't need to stay because the war was over. He claims to have given his command to his capable vice commander before leaving the area, and it seems to him that both of his siblings share the same tendency to abdicate their responsibilities to others. When they all get down to chat later, Ruru says he's heard that Gabiru returned to the battlefield. Benny Maru informs him that he is currently assisting him with cleaning up after the battle, and that he has become friends with one of Mim's followers, whom he has named Father Midder. Even if they win, Ruru believes that war is a lot of work, and carrying POWs around will also be a lot of labor. Benny Maru assures him that he can relax because he has explained everything to them, and he hopes that they won't rebel. Ruru asks Benny Maru when Gabiru will return, wondering what kind of explanation he gave them. Ruru is taken aback by Benimaru's announcement that he and the 3 basketeers will be returning soon. Benimaru reminds him that, because Malim destroyed the capital of Urania, they decided to temporarily house the residents in their nation since they are unable to care for everyone else. Those whose villages were still intact were returned to them after they made the decision to divide them up. The lycanthropes and muscular magin will follow the guild's orders to rehabilitate. Everyone else visiting Tempest will only be seeking new skills. Land of Urania. Then Ruru recalls that since they are creating Urania from scratch, it is now Mim's land, and that, during Vorus, he advised her to relocate her capital there. She thought the idea was good, and Ben Maru informs Ruru that in addition to the lycanthropes, some Magan prisoners will also be arriving, so just in case, he will advise everyone to remain vigilant. This Rem is happy that his followers are now capable of making decisions on their own, but he questions whether they still require his assistance. When Diablo returns from Falmouth a few days later, he presents Ruru with the peace treaty's documentation and 1,500 stellas as payment for his reparations. When Ruru remarks that this is more than they had anticipated, Diablo informs him that the lion's share of the money came from King Adam Marissa's personal reserves. Ruru wonders if a civil war will break out soon, since the royalists knew that the nobles would take everything away from them in any case, even without the knights to defend them. Diablo says that there is, and he clarifies, a remaining balance in the form of a loon, but he doesn't think the king will stick to the deal for very long. He was the brother of the king. Rafael informs Ruru that the faction that declines to pay the remaining reparations will probably push to seize the throne rather than the prince. The obligation to ADM Maris Diablo explains that ADM Maris would be moving to a small village in the country close to Earl Nidal's lands after abdicating the throne and becoming a viscount. Yom and the others live in Nidal's domain and can provide assistance. Jim would be there to stop anything, even if the new king tried to cut off Adaris. Announcing the new king's dishonesty would spark a civil war. Even though Ruru believes this is a great plan, he still advises Diablo to remain vigilant. He requests that he limit the number of civilian deaths and that, in the event that he needs more money, he use the stellas. When Diablo says that this won't be required, he approaches Ruru to ask for permission to fight by himself. Ruru says no. He says that he will provide Diablo with some soldiers to work with, so he should keep quiet, and Diablo consents to remain in the background. Then he recalls that Rahim was contacted by the Western Holy Church, which is interested in finding out more information regarding the Falmouth War, so they called him so they could hear his justification. Ruru responds that it won't be beneficial if they ignore them when he asks what they should do. Since there were only 3 survivors, Diablo says it would be best to let him testify. Ruru believes this indicates that they are clearly interested in learning more. Diablo asks him if he should have Rahim tell them after he says he has heard that the church has been watching Vora and they won't be able to lie to them. The real deal. Ruru says he will record a message in this crystal for them, and he will have Rahim deliver it to see how the church responds. When Gappa eventually arrives, he remarks that there are pals present. Next, Ruru witnesses Alba Sophia and the lycanthropes, along with the prisoners of war, entering the city. I'm glad he accepts. Ruru says it's okay and asks if Phoebe is with them. He discovers that they have given him the task of keeping an eye on the prisoners of war. After telling them that they have already set up work and housing for the refugees, Ruru promises to update them on the specifics later. They then depart for the time being. Later, Gabiru returns, and Ruru says he has heard that performed admirably in combat. Gabiru says that his father beat him severely and that he still has a lot to learn. He still has room to grow, so Midre Roru advises him not to worry too much about it. Gabiru promises to try his hardest to meet Midre Roru's expectations. Then he gives Ruru a letter from Malim, and Ruru reads it and learns that Malim will be seeing him the following time. She asks him to teach her followers how to cook, and she plans to bring some of them along. When Ruru asks Gabiru if she understands what this is all about, she responds that the dragon faithful lead a frugal lifestyle and never cook the food they serve to Malim. Sean questions why Meme doesn't ask her followers to prepare her food directly, while Ruru gets what Meme means. They should give them the royal treatment they deserve, and Gabiru says Ruru, adding that she has a unique way of reading the room. After all, we observe that a month has passed since Voris and the city is now teeming with life. When Guild eventually arrives in the city, Ruru observes that he appears worn out. He asks Guild in a private conversation what took place. Gelt informs him that while he was grouping the prisoners, arranging them, and clearing the land through surveying, a number of issues came to light. Thought communication was an easy way for the High Orcs to communicate with each other. However, it was not possible for them to do so with lycanthropes or Megans. And there were also some Megans who did not enjoy being bossed around. Ruru tells Guild that they should go out for a drink tonight, because this reminds him of his days working in an office, even though he believes that people who are driven to work can't accomplish much, and that teaching and using people is a difficult task. Then, as the scene shifts to them in a bar, Guild remarks that it's hard to force people to develop at the same rate. According to Trini, he must have the impression that completing the task himself would be quicker. However, if he does this, those who report to him will not gain any experience. Ruru asks Guild to be understanding when he says that he won't be able to help him further at this rate. They drink all night because he believes that this is what his life as an office worker was like. The next day, when the scene cuts to Ruru walking around town with her, Rickard tells him that the merchants have started to come back because Fuse has declared everything to be safe. Now that Ruru's been crowned the Demon Lord, Rickard tells him that while this is great news, no major moves have been made by the other nations. He claims that Tempest and Ruru has expressed her desire for him to move quickly to complete the highway, and that the Emperor of the Elian Sorceress Dynasty, El-Ru, also goes by the name Alia. Rickard claims that every one of their relatives is carrying out their sworn duty and putting forth a lot of effort on their behalf all across the world. The scene then cuts to Ruru meeting with the older people as he continues to wonder who oversaw the highway survey. Ruru orders him to finish the survey by the time GL has some free time again. But Soy says there is still a problem. Soy reports that he hasn't discovered any hostile monsters along the planned route, and when he explained his plans to them, they all readily agreed to it. He notes that the Kusha Mountains are on the edge of Tempest, an area known for its dangerous canyons and the Tang people who live in the peaks. He clarifies that although Tangu are said to be amiable, they are actually a warrior race and even a demon, making it difficult to reject this information since it comes from the local population. Lord Frey steered clear of a confrontation with them. Benim Maru says he will go instead of Ruru, who says he will speak with the Tang. He suggests that they ask her for advice on this. Ruru agrees to leave this to him later when he mentions that a demon lord visiting them might make them wary. Ruru believes that there are numerous issues sporadically, so he should call a meeting of all parties shortly. After that, the scene shifts to Ruru and Hakuro meeting, and Hakuro tells Ruru that he has some news to share regarding Clayman's land, which is known as the Puppet Nation of D. The only people who live there are dark elves who are in charge of looking after the castle grounds, and they demonstrated the will to they persuaded him to obey them by telling him that D was once the center of an elven kingdom, and that there were still ruins in the area to back up their claims. The elves identified themselves as gravekeepers, and Remur surmises that Clayman's wealth must have come largely from the loot found among the ruins. Ruru tells Hakuro to keep this discovery secret until he can see the ruins himself, and after that he has a meeting with everyone. Hakuro claims that there are ancient ruins all over the world, and that people who make treasure hunting their profession frequently raid them. However, only a very small number of ruins have been discovered so far. He informs them that he has at last turned into a demon. Lord is pleased about it, as are all of them. This Ruru states that he believes there should be no problems with the decision that he can now rule the entire Jura forest. Benim, when Maru presses him to clarify if this covers everything on the other side of the river, he replies that it does. Maru then queries whether there is a problem with this Benim. Although Maru claims there is no issue, the fathers are acknowledged as chancellors of the lands they themselves have constructed as well as to the Dennis beyond the river. Therefore, the area beyond the river does not count as the Dry's domain. It would be a headache indeed, Lord, the advent of a new demon. According to Kijin, this is an intriguing development because it means that anyone wishing to live in this forest will now need to obtain permission from the demon lords, who have agreed that he is entitled to all of the forest's natural resources. There are a lot of people living in the forest right now. Gabiru says, and Rimuro knows that they will be coming to ask for his permission. Ricard mentions a demon, and Shah says that anyone who doesn't greet him will probably be labeled as a rebel. A symbol of power is a lord. Gaby, according to Rue, even the lizard men yearned for a demon's protection. Ruru will also be receiving a visit from Lord and his father, as he has informed him of his ascension. Ruru asks Cheyenne, after he says he's already spoken to her about this, why she had not told him this. He decides to make this a major campaign and take advantage of the opportunity to reveal their town, because he believes that the smaller tribes will follow suit now that the lizard men are on their way. He clarifies that there is still room for more people to live here, and notes that it will be simpler to invite everyone at once. They will show the town to everyone and hope to increase their population, but they also need more workers. He says that if they take this chance to educate them about this town, perhaps some of them will decide to move here. He says they should have a festival and believes they also need to unwind because they have been itching a lot lately. Everyone is thrilled to hear this, and Ruru says that they can also make this his public debut. The episode concludes. Stay tuned for more thrilling episodes, but please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. Today's episode begins with the leader Rimuru in his slime form, announcing the closure of the festival due to future considerations. He then asks Sui about any changes he noticed in the monster ecosystem. Sui informs him that he dispatched physical copies everywhere for investigation and found nothing alarming except for an elder sword bear in the northwest region of the forest, which he dealt with. Rimuru receives notifications that the elder sword bear, much like the orc disaster, recommends adventurers to be at least rank A. To handle it, the slime expresses concern, stating regular adventurers shouldn't face such threats. A member suggests intensifying the training of new recruits, which Rimuru agrees to. The slime also mentions that strengthening Datta and his team would be beneficial. However, the real issue lies in the appearance of powerful monsters, prompting them to devise a strategy. One member proposes setting up an anti-magic barrier, which they've already done using a fully automated magic generator model. Rimuru expresses surprise at the secret project, and a member explains it's a revolutionary magical device that automatically counters any spell, similar to rune magic but much more efficient and versatile. Rimuru commends them for accomplishing such a feat in such a short time, praising their brilliance, to which everyone reveals their participation in the project. The scene shifts outdoors where we see Rimuru, the slime leader, with everyone else. One member informs him that Tempest is a nation of monsters with a high concentration of magical particles, and they've been pondering how to utilize it. Thus, they designed the fully automated magic generator to consume the magical particles in the air, forming a barrier against magic. But its usefulness doesn't end there. They've installed a magical particle gathering device in it. If used, it can reduce the magical particle density in the air. However, the device has its drawbacks. Below a certain density level, its efficiency isn't very useful. But that shouldn't be an issue in their city. Otherwise, it's perfect. Rimuru is impressed and approaches the device, explaining that if this fully automated magic generator collects magical particles from the air to maintain a magic barrier automatically, one member informs him that if its magical particles are depleted, magic will disappear. Therefore, it was designed to have the ability to store some fuel, a crystal made of magical particles drawn from the air. Then Rimuru questions whether using magical crystals as fuel would be inefficient. He receives a notification about magical crystal information, revealing that when a magical crystal transforms into magic, 90 of it is wasted. The leader then informs them that if that happens, they have the runic magic Rimuru invented for them. With this runic magic, the amount can be reduced to only 10, which will be sufficient and efficient for their purpose. The wasted magical particles will just appear and disappear, thus can be reused. Rimuru tells them that with a diluted magical particle density, fewer monsters and spiritual creatures will be produced, reducing the likelihood of creating something Datta and his team can't handle. This invention is remarkable and reflects our nation's unique qualities excellently. Another member adds that a magic barrier isn't the only magic that can be used for it. Despite there being limits to the types of magic it can handle, switching the magical course engraved in it allows them to generate various forms of enchantments. The slime gets very excited and says it's literally like a recording device, reminiscing about when they were asked to create something similar to the recording device described to them. They managed to make a smaller version, which might eventually be practically usable, or they could make larger versions to generate magic on a wide scale, enough for use in warfare. Then, we return to reality, and one member asks him to suggest how to utilize this device. Firstly, fully automated magic generators are set up along the desired route at regular intervals between the stones evenly. Then, the anti-magic barrier is activated, and as long as the magical particle density is high, they don't need to fuel it, and the only work needed is regular patrol to ensure it operates normally. Rimuru asks about the formula for the barrier magic they'll engrave. The leader tells him that he asked Kuropii to mass-produce the generators and is waiting for his approval. The slime agrees to this and looks at Vesta, asking if he can rely on him to oversee the work. Vesta agrees, and then Geld is asked to allow him and the men to install the device because it's very heavy, and he's carrying it. Suddenly, Feldora appears laughing and says once this is done, I can unleash my halte as much as I want. This angers the slime greatly, and he refuses, telling him that if he does that, most of the town's inhabitants will die and orders him to restrain his halte for a longer period. Diablo interrupts them and says, but Rimuru, completely suppressing someone's halte like Feldora, does is very difficult. Even Lord Benimaru and his brothers leak some of their haltage, and since Feldora has more magical particles than anyone else, it will be difficult to suppress them permanently. Rimuru informs them that if Feldora detonates it somewhere, the entire area will be obliterated, and many dangerous monsters, maybe even monsters on the level of calamities, will be produced, and it would be a disaster. He tells them that he'll take that into consideration and asks Feldora to be patient for a while because at the time he thought the issue of magical particle density had been resolved. A more challenging problem has arisen. Afterwards, Rimuru gathered with his assistants and told them that he had heard all their reports. Then he handed Geld a piece of paper. When Geld opened it, he found that Rimuru wanted him to be responsible for this construction. It was a castle for Milim and the others, as he had been drawing it in his spare time. He strongly believed that he could build it and make it incredibly magnificent. He asked Geld for his opinion, and Geld became very flustered. Rimuru thought he might have pressured him too much, but Edmurus told him that he wanted them to rely on him and not worry about anything. He said he would go with Geld and take Murd as well, so they could rely on them to build this city just as they wanted. Rimuru was overjoyed and reassured him that he was very confident because he knew it was in safe hands with Kaijin. Then he thought to himself that small problems could be resolved by performing more significant tasks. He told Geld that he knew he was capable of this, and of course if he faced any problems, he could turn to him, so he should start working with a clear mind. Geld stood up and told him that this was a massive task, and if he failed, everything would be destroyed. Rimuru reassured him more and more, telling him that even if he made a mistake, it would be a learning experience for him, and the loss would only equal the cost of one city, which they could always compensate for. Afterwards, Datta spoke up, saying that what he said was true. Some time ago, he did something wrong but remained silent immediately, so Rimuru wouldn't know anything. However, Rimuru heard him while he was speaking, so he requested Datta not to tell him what he did earlier. Datta didn't respond, so Rimuru ordered him to come to his office later and tell him the details. Then Geld thanked Rimuru for entrusting him with this important task, and suddenly Sean spoke up, saying it wasn't fair to give everything to Geld. Rimuru replied that he was the right man for the job, and that she also had an important task herself. She spoke angrily, saying she didn't consider cooking important to her, and wanted a different task. Rimuru responded that he was sure she was skilled in many things, but cooking wasn't her forte. Benimaru agreed, saying that Rimuru was absolutely right, and she should protect Rimuru in his absence. After finishing the conversation, Rimuru wanted to end the meeting for the day, but then remembered something. He spoke to Diablo and asked him to inform them about his plan and how it was progressing. Diablo replied that for Lord Yom, Bargaining with the kings and nobles would certainly be challenging. So he asked Edmurus to inform him about everything related to the nobles. Rimuru considered that making Edmurus an ally might be an intriguing idea based on how things were going. As for her brother, Iron Edward, it seemed he was indeed planning something behind the scenes. Rimuru suggested that it might take several months to rebuild their army and mobilize it. Diablo then mentioned that he wanted to expedite everything, so he entrusted Benimaru with building their army. They were ready at any time, with forces operating in the open and another force working behind the scenes. In reality, everyone wanted to join, making the selection of soldiers very difficult. Diablo also mentioned that Ranga hadn't returned yet. He had been given the crystal ball and a dog from his entourage to accompany him to the capital of Ingratia. However, Tabin couldn't enter the capital because of the barrier surrounding it. But he confirmed that Ranga had entered the city, as Ingratia and Lubilius were connected by a special magical passage called the Gate. He ordered Ranga to use it, as the Gate was a magical circle that allowed for instant travel between 2 points via a special distance. Diablo should receive a report as soon as Ranga returns. Since the report is delayed, he suspects that something might have happened, leading Rimuru to speculate that they might have killed him to silence him. However, Diablo explains that his unique skill, temptation, steals the soul of the person he controls, so if they die, he would know. Rimuru expresses concern that being treated as villains is somewhat detrimental since they lack crucial information for an accurate assessment of the situation. This concern is interrupted by the boy, who feels it's extremely dangerous to infiltrate Lubilius. Rimuru responds that ultimately, Hinata is in Lubilius, and reckless actions there won't benefit them. His message to Hinata conveyed a desire to turn a new leaf, albeit subtly. However, this is also part of the luck charm. He doesn't believe Diablo's plan will fail as long as the Western Holy Church remains inactive. Benimaru is urged to settle matters immediately. Shuna adds that while Rimuru fought Saint Hinata, they were under attack, suggesting a connection between the two events. Clayman hints at a mastermind behind the scenes, referred to as He. Rimuru advises them not to discount the possibility that he might move as well. Shuna exclaimed, "He's an enemy we can't ignore or neglect." Rimuru responded, "If this person ends up playing a role in this matter, Hinata might also act on her own. But there's something I can't quite grasp. I feel like I'm missing something. Do you think Hinata attacked me purely out of her own will, or because someone requested or ordered her to?" Everyone was astonished, and Guy asked her, "What do you mean?" Rimuru explained that the old man mentioned is the only one Hinata, the leader of the holy, might listen to. She wouldn't even heed the recluse emperor. She's famous for that. Rimuru agreed, stating that she didn't listen to him at all. Guy interjected, "No one can issue orders to Hinata." Shuna pondered, was the timing just a coincidence? Rimuru suggested it's possible someone incited her. Diablo added, "It's possible he commanded her to do it." Benimaru retorted, "Whoever he is, he made the kingdom of Falmouth mobilize and control the demon lord Clayman, attempting to destroy our country. However, he can't compel Hinata to do what he wants." Diablo concluded this means the Western Holy Church won't act at this time. "Is that your intuition, Rimuru?" Rimuru affirmed, emphasizing that they didn't want their relationship to be hostile. He was certain Hinata isn't foolish enough to provoke enmity with Tempest, considering Veldora and himself. After saying that, Shuna recalled Hinata's words, indicating they obstructed her, because the Western Church doesn't recognize coexistence with monsters. Perhaps the matter isn't limited to just that. Then they received notice that there's a chance multiple motives are at play. All these events interconnected by the downfall of Tempest, but it's deduced that they weren't the result of a single will. All countries, individuals, circumstances, and other factors involved. While their interests may seem aligned, there are contradictions that wouldn't naturally unify under a single mastermind's will. Rimuru remarks in another formulation, "There's more than one person behind this. When I look at it this way, it becomes logical. We were a hindrance in Clayman's path, but at the same time, he tried to exploit us. So if Hinata and I had destroyed each other, it would have served as motivation. As a state leader, I posed an obstacle to the kingdom of Falmouth. They probably wished for Hinata to kill me. As for Hinata, given her stance on enforcing the doctrine, it was impossible for her to ignore a monster like me. Here, the motivations of the three converge, resulting in her fleeing from Hinata, defeating Falmouth, and Clayman's demise. Who could he be? He must be too busy rebuilding his forces after their sudden depletion. Will he attempt to confront me directly nonetheless? Then the voice replies, "You must take action. If the mastermind's intellect surpasses even Clayman's, he'll surely intervene early on." Rimuru responds, "There's no reason for him to target me. Someone who's been hiding all this time won't suddenly move now." The voice retorts, "You mustn't forget the high probability that there are multiple individuals working in the shadows." Rimuru acknowledges it as a valid point, and if there are other masterminds, it's easy to imagine actions being taken without considering what Hinata desires. Diablo adds, "Given the existence of multiple interests, we should assume Hinata won't be the sole decisive factor." Is that what you mean? Rimuru agrees, "You're very perhaps we were mistaken. As Diablo said, there might be more than one mastermind behind all this, and because their interests aren't aligned, they're not in agreement." Nomura suggested that the person hinted at by Clayman is conspiring with them. Rimuru responded, "I can't assert that for sure, but it would be dangerous to act based on assumptions when we have little information. If we consider that Hinata acted out of commitment rather than orders, it becomes more understandable." Diablo stated, "I'll conduct additional investigations. It was mentioned to me that the merchants supplied Edmaris and others with information, but thinking about it now, it seems highly suspicious." Rimuru replied, "A lot of money is being spent on war, and there are warmongers everywhere. So I told myself it's possible for those merchants to work behind the scenes, hoping to profit." Then, turning to Shuna, Rimuru asked her to check the records obtained from Clayman's castle for information on all the merchants who visited. He instructed Diablo to investigate the traders who dealt with Falmouth. Additionally, he told Benamaru to review our reinforcements and ensure they're ready for anything. Regarding Rigard, Rimuru instructed him to organize a huge festival, so arrange everything for that. Rigard was also asked to review the city's security measures to be prepared for any kind of invaders. Lastly, Rimuru told Sean that she can accompany Ranga. And with that, the executive meeting concluded, just as it always does, ending another episode of this. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. Our episode begins with the girl Hinata gathering everyone and apologizing for her tardiness. Then, the boy Sari speaks up, arrogantly questioning Hinata's abilities and suggesting her failure to prevent the birth of a new demon lord. Fail not. All the members oppose Sari's disrespectful remarks, questioning if he desires death for opposing their leader, Hinata. Hinata intervenes, urging everyone to silence their disagreements as it's not the appropriate time for conflict. She offers Sari her position, contingent upon improving his skills through a test. Then the girl Ritis stands up and reports about the Great Jura Forest, where many traders have been observed entering and leaving the monster country. Freds asks if they are collaborating with the Demon Lord, but one member informs them that the Demon Lord hasn't made any noticeable impact yet. Hinata requests Ritis to continue her report, and Ritis informs them that the monster country has advanced more than expected. The roads have been improved, and while there was a high density of magical particles, it wasn't sufficient to affect humans, and there were no signs of magical creatures. It seems that the Demon Lord Rimuru's desire to establish friendly relations with humans is genuine. That's the translation up to this point. Let me know if you need further assistance. Hinata asks Ritis about Veldora, and Ritis informs her that entering the sealed cave is forbidden, so they couldn't confirm Veldora's presence. Ritis concludes her report, and Hinata thanks her for the information. Then Freds remarks that the information about Veldora's return was clearly wrong. Hinata requests the next report from everyone, and they begin sharing more information. One member deduces that the Kingdom of Ingratia is living peacefully despite the fall of the Great Falmouth Empire, which will enhance Ingratia's influence and undoubtedly increase its power. Then it's Sari's turn to speak. He informs them about the current situation in the Kingdom of Falmouth, where King Edmaris abdicated the throne peacefully. However, it seems the new king, Edward, is recruiting many talented mercenaries and forcefully conscripting citizens. All the nobles are in a state of panic, seeing these as signs of an imminent civil war. However, they lack enough information to determine if the demon lord Rimuru is involved. Sari also discovered who King Edward was communicating with, the leader of the Supreme Council in the Free Union and traders from the East. This leads Hinata to suspect that Edward is bolstering his military strength. She doubts that Rimuru is ignorant of these developments and believes it's part of Rimuru's plan. Then Sari inquires if King Edward has been communicating with the traders from the East, and if they were engaged in any suspicious activities. He turns to his friend Glinda, who states that according to her information, those traders weren't involved in any dubious activities. She suggests going to verify it herself. Hinata warns Glinda not to expose herself to danger or heed what the traders say. Glinda assures her that she will gather all the details. At that moment, Renard, the beautiful boy with yellow hair, speaks to them, saying that the effects of Veldora's return were less than expected. The only reported damage was to the Falmouth army executing the operation. However, since they believe that Rimuru, the demon lord, disseminated this information, the actual damage would be zero. Then Sari, the boy with white hair, expresses his curiosity about the words of Archbishop Reheim regarding what happened on the battlefield at that time. Hinata explains that she summoned him for that reason and expects him to arrive soon. Another person speaks up, mentioning a rumor that Rimuru agreed with Veldora on everything, but it's difficult to confirm the accuracy of this statement. However, it's confirmed that Veldora has returned and is currently dormant. Hinata assures them that she will share any information she receives from the king, emphasizing her transparency. Everyone pays close attention to her, focusing with 100% accuracy. Then the slime Hinata speaks again, stating that only Rimuru, the demon lord, can control Veldora. She asserts that they won't resort to violence against Rimuru on this matter. This angers the imposing and intimidating figure, who questions if they will ignore Rimuru's plan in Falmouth. Sari acknowledges that opposing demon lords seems impossible on the surface, but they are the 10 great saints, implying they have their own power and authority. No demon can defeat us, no matter how strong they become, one of them says confidently. Another adds, but we aren't just dealing with the demon lord. There are storm dragons who are incredibly powerful. The large man repeats firmly, nevertheless, we cannot allow the demon lord to do as he pleases in human lands. This land is ours, and we control it as we see fit. Their leader, Hinata, intervenes, emphasizing the need to follow instructions. She asserts that it's not right to say they will simply ignore what's happening in Falmouth. She reminds them that it's a real civil war and the people, not just the royal or noble class, need protection. She warns against any action that could harm innocent people or other nations. In this case, she says we should ignore Rimuru's actions, as the demon lord declared previously that he has no intention of opposing humans. There's no reason for us to take any hostile action against him, while Archbishop Reheim participated in punitive forces. I failed to cleanse Rimuru. As they consider us enemies, we have no choice but to ignore his actions. The large-necked man, angered, accuses Hinata of making a mistake, calling it an error of the Western Holy Church. Hinata acknowledges the truth in his words, saying she won't claim sole responsibility. Surprisingly, Sari expresses disbelief, asking how someone from another world ended up here. Hinata explains that it seems he died in his world and was sent here anew as a slime like her. She believes this narrative, considering her past experiences. Then Raitis asks what she means, and Hinata reveals that she, too, was exploited by the Eastern traders, who claimed that Rimuru was a monster who killed her mentor, leading her to condemn him without hesitation. Then after that, he ran away from me after becoming the demon lord. Glenda, the redhead girl, said to her, well, if he considers you his enemy, it wouldn't be surprising for him to think of revenge. The leader, Hinata, informed them, anyway, I'm thinking of going and talking to him to understand his mindset, and I'm also ready to apologize to him if necessary. Everyone from their council intervened, saying unanimously, you can't do that. It's too dangerous. You might fall into a trap and get killed. She told them, "Calm down, my friends. The priority here is to understand what the Demon Lord Rimuru is thinking." Then she speaks to herself, not expecting this matter to turn into a real problem as they think, according to all reports, a kind and gentle person passes by. It seemed so when I met him for the first time. I might have had a biased intention. Perhaps if I'm sincere with him, we can understand each other. But maybe if she's sincere with him, they can understand each other. At this moment, Ryam, the Archbishop of Falmouth, informs Hinata that he has come to respond to her invitation. Hinata delves into the matter and tells him she wants to know the details of Feldora's return. Suddenly, these angels appear in the air, surprising Hinata with their presence, and she asks them what happened to bring them here. Sari asks about these people, and their friend answers that they are members of the 7 celestial beings, shocking Sari upon hearing this because he knows they train heroes and appointed the celestial trials for Hinata. Thanks to her unique skills, she managed to copy their techniques, making them mere old folks meddling in everything she does. Then Hinata considers ending these matters peacefully at some point. She asks them about the reason they were brought here today. They inform her that there is no need to be cautious, as Archbishop Rehaim has returned with information about the Demon Lord Rimuru. They are interested in hearing it as well. Rehaim recounts what happened in his village, where he witnessed something truly terrifying. The true Demon Lord appeared, causing the birth of a new Demon Lord. One of the members of the celestial beings compares this to the sunlight scripture magic that was cast by Giran, but states that it should be possible to seal this magic with an anti-magic barrier. Hinata interjects, saying it was physical, not magical, and must have been the encoding of sunlight in one place. Contrary to that, it should have been easy to handle with a barrier. Using her scientific knowledge from her old world, people here would find it difficult to understand and respond to that. Rehaim then asks them to wait for a moment. The light was indeed frightening, but what was truly terrifying was what followed. In the next moment, silence engulfed the entire battlefield. The 20,000 soldiers on that battlefield and everyone who was alive died in the same moment. The only ones exempted were him, Razin, and King Edmurus. Everyone is shocked by what they hear. After that, Hinata goes to her friend and tells her what happened. Her friend is very angry at this Demon Lord, as he easily thwarted her plans. She wouldn't allow the annihilation of a valuable source like humans, so she had no choice but to shelter him. He was one of the beings no one could deal with, not even Luminous himself. The only ones who fit this description are Feldora and the awakened Demon Lords. Hinata responds that if the Demon Lord Rimuru has been awakened, then there is a good chance he has acquired a massive amount of souls at once, like the great Demon Lords in the legends. Sari asks if they ignore this, won't this threat become beyond their control? Arnett said, if Demon Lord Rimuru was previously human and desires to coexist with humanity, there should be no need to fight him without reason. Ritus agreed, saying, "You're right. We should observe and see what he does." Renard then added, "But it's been proven that he wiped out 20,000 knights without hesitation. He is a clear threat. Can we trust Demon Lord Rimuru?" Hinata responded, "I have a plan regarding that. All of you return to gathering all the information as planned." Then the person dressed in white spoke to Rehaim, asking if he had any other messages to share. Rehaim answered affirmatively and approached Hinata, saying, "There's a message for you from the Demon Lord." Hinata was surprised. The Demon Lord said, "I will face you one-on-one." Then he vanished from the crystal. Everyone was afraid, asking Hinata what she would do. Arnett said, "I will crush the ambitions of the Demon Lord for you." Sari remarked, "You have some sword skills." Hinata responded, "Let's not provoke him. If we do, the other Demon Lords won't ignore it. And if he's awakened, it's better to calmly accept his offer." Ritis added, "If we send a disciplinary force to eliminate him, it may lead to a great war involving all Western regions." Hinata said, "Exclude Clayman from this, and now it's my turn. It doesn't seem logical for him to seek revenge now of all times. How did Raisin know that Rehaim was carrying this message? Regardless, I was the one requested, so I should go. The man warned that it's dangerous if he intends harm, she shouldn't go." Arzi laughed, saying, "Some people will protect you. The Demon Lord is indeed dangerous, but even if the discussion turns grim, there's no need to worry. you're capable of defeating him. However, you forgot something. Even you can't defeat the dragon of evil. An attack on the dragon won't affect me. Then we see the sword coming out of the crystal. Arzi assured, you can rest assured. We'll grant you this. Hinata asked if they couldn't be less ambiguous, and what they wanted was the most they could ask of Feldora, but they likely hope we kill each other. Then, holding the sword, she accepted the gift with pleasure. Arzi said, we hope for your success. Our hopes are pinned on you. If the sword is activated, it will protect you. Then they vanished. On the next day, Nicholas bid farewell to Hinata, saying, you're going, aren't you? She answered, yes, because this is my responsibility. He responded, but isn't there a chance for you to change your mind? She reassured him, saying, don't worry, I'll be fine. It's not destined that I fight him. Things will be all right, just like last time. There's no need to worry. Then we transition to Rimuru, who is conversing with Suka while they were doing maintenance on the road to Sarayum. Suka informs Rimuru that Hinata is coming to see him. Rimuru becomes very agitated because she's coming alone. Hinata then explains that she's the only one who left the kingdom of Ingratia. She also tells him that she saw 4 holy knights following her. Rimuru becomes more and more worried because he feels she's serious this time. He thanks Suka for helping her. After that, Diablo, with his unusually pale complexion, comes to him, bearing an important report. Rehaim has died. He wasn't sick and the cause of his death is unclear, but there's suspicion that he was killed. Rimuru is shocked by this, as he didn't imagine this would actually happen. Diablo explains that surrounding nations are spreading rumors that the Archbishop's death was part of a devil's plot. As a response, the temple knights from all those nations have gathered and are likely to join the new king. Edward, within a few days, Rimuru is bewildered by all this chaos. Our session today began when everyone was gathered around the table, and then the female leader spoke, informing them that they had received crucial information. There are 5 individuals, including the leader of the Holy Knights, Hinata, heading towards the city of Tempest. They seem to possess very high abilities and have managed to evade and escape pursuit from Soka. Soka informed them that they are extremely dangerous. As for the Temple Knights from the surrounding countries, they are heading towards Falmouth with over 30,000 soldiers. Their goal is to kill the demon who killed the Archbishop, and the demon who provides support for Lord Day. He is the same killer. Since this is the common understanding of the situation, we cannot expect help from other countries or influential nobles in Falmouth. At that moment, Diablo speaks to them, saying he was wrong to send Rehaim as an envoy. Cheyenne tells him that this is true and that it was his mistake from the beginning. As she is higher in rank than him, it seems she will have to take over leadership from him. Rimuru then turns to her and asks, what exactly will you do, Cheyenne? She responds with a smile. Of course, I'll raise an army to kill their kings and nobles. Rimuru becomes very angry with her and tells her, no, you won't do that. Then Diablo tells her no one is immune to mistakes. Everyone is wrong. Revealing your identity is not the big problem. She says, that's true. If information leaks that a demon is involved, I won't be able to continue. Diablo agrees, saying, all right, keep me informed of everything. Anyone can bear responsibility and retire, but if you make a mistake, you must admit it to learn from it next time. Then Cheyenne speaks to him, that girl with the crimson eyes and crimson hair named Xian, and tells him, you must not lose your determination for such trivial reasons. You are a very strong man. The other person tells him, you are stronger than many others, and we rely on you. Diablo then says to them, all right, my friends, shall we continue with our plan? So Rimuru said to him, of course you must complete this task until the end. At that moment, Diablo kneels down in respect to his leader and says to her, thank you, my lady. Now that you have made me regain trust in this mission, I will see it through to the end. Rimuru tells him, all right, go and fix things. Then Shiuna asks her about the Western Holy Church. What do you think about talking to Adelman since he was a high-ranking priest in the Illuminated sect? Rimuru responds, who is this man Adalman? I don't know him. Shiuna informs her that he was the person who protected Clayman's castle. Rimuru remembers, he's the dead one who Shuna turned into a skeletal friend. Then the dragon tells her that Adelman is currently working in the sealed cave, so he will use telepathy to summon him here immediately. At this point, the others are amazed and wonder how such a powerful dragon can have these abilities. Adalman is summoned immediately and Rimuru keeps him at bay, telling him to be quiet and not to dwell on formalities. "Let's get to the point," she says. Adalman explains that he previously worked in the Western Holy Church, holding a high position as the leader of that church. He then goes on to explain that the Holy Empire of Lubelius is a religious state with Luminous as its god. They considered themselves the slaves of Luminaz, and they performed very strange rituals. The state was run by a group called the Imperial Agency. When he was there, the Western Holy Church was nothing more than a branch of the Imperial Agency. Their sole purpose was to practice the religion of the Illuminated, so they did not possess a military army. Later, they established the Temple Knights, who were welcomed by all other countries to protect the believers from the threat posed by monsters. But then a rift began to widen between Lubelius and other countries, leading to the creation of the Emperor's personal guard. In other words, the Imperial Bastions. This was an exceptional force and authority to issue orders to the Temple Knights. Immediately after that, the situation changed in Lubelius as they gained a new military force called the Crusaders, and the power of the church increased drastically. So Rimuru asked him, why? Adalman explained that the skeletal structure actually believed that the reason was a group of individuals known as the Seven Criminals. When he was there, their authority was second only to that of the reclusive emperor, but they were a very shady group. The Western Holy Church became corrupt to the core under their influence, and they set a trap for him. It was a very elaborate trap. However, the Crusaders became just a facade, and Hinata rebuilt them to become the strongest knights. Therefore, Lubelius gained control of both the Crusaders and the Imperial Bastions. Then he looked at her and said, "Please be cautious of Lubelius. They have the 10 great saints, the illuminated class." He then explained to her that humans evolve into this status after undergoing multiple rigorous tests. They are members of the Imperial Bastions, called the Three War Sages, which includes the leaders of the Crusaders, including Hinata. Rimuru objected to this woman named Hinata, saying they could persuade her to convert from her creed to ours. Rimuru told him, "No, my dear, we don't need that. You can leave now and thank you for the information." He said, "Okay." Then he left, and after they gathered all the information, Rimuru believed it was time to start drawing up a counterplan. At that moment, the second leader, strong in battles, spoke, saying he believed it was his turn. Rimuru agreed, assigning him responsibility for our final defense line, telling him to wait, as she truly believed he was the only person she could rely on to do so. The other, with yellow hair, agreed. Then Benamaru, the horn boy with red hair, announced the reinforcements for Lord Day. They were as follows: the 100 mountain crushers led by Gobota of the Green Numbers, numbering 4,000 led by the 100 Karinai, and finally the 100 Hyro led by Gabaru, the very powerful dragon. As for the army of 4,300, these represent the reinforcements. Any comments? Do you have any questions? Then they summoned Ranga, the very powerful horned wolf, who arrived immediately. So Rimuru told them, "We need occasional training to become stronger and keep our bodies agile." The wolf reassured her, saying that Miss Shuna had taught him some exercises, so consider it done. Rimuru then spoke to Diablo, asking him about his plan. Diablo explained that he didn't expect reinforcements of 30,000 soldiers. His plan was based on the assumption that the new king's army would be around 10,000 at most. First, if King Edward mobilized his forces, Adamaris would send a message questioning why the new king wouldn't be bound to sign the contract Adamaris prepared, so they needed to execute him as soon as possible. Currently, Adamaris is taking refuge in the Nidal region under Lord Day's protection. However, Nidal has 5,000 soldiers. The plan was to use instantaneous teleportation to send their army of 4,300 soldiers there. Rimuru pointed out that if an army of 30,000 soldiers advances, it wouldn't be enough. She suggested surrendering this time if they relinquished the remaining debts. Diablo insisted they shouldn't surrender under any circumstances. He asked Rimuru to allow him to handle this matter, and she agreed but instructed him not to harm anyone unrelated to the matter. Diablo agreed to his king's request because it was his duty as a servant to complete the mission to its end. He would search for the killer framed for such a crime. Perhaps among the 30,000 people, some have connections to the killer, so a thorough investigation will be conducted. Benimaru stated that since Diablo would go, they didn't need to worry about him. Then he asked Hakuro if he could subdue the new king's forces without casualties. Hakuro answered that it was very easy for him. It would be easy to eliminate them in one ambush, but it wouldn't be a training exercise for their forces. Benimaru then asked Abiru to prepare plenty of healing potions. Rimuru feels like everything is going on without him, which angers him greatly. Shion tells him not to worry about the invasion of the kingdom, wishing Rimuru luck and success in everything. Now it's just a matter of who will deal with Hinata and her team. Just then, So comes with urgent news. Movements have been detected among the Steel Knights. Rimuru asks if anything has happened to Hinata's group, to which Shu responds that nothing has happened to them. He then mentions that Hakuru, who was monitoring the kingdom of Ingratia, reported the departure of 100-foot soldiers, and it seems certain they are on their way here. Rimuru asks if they will join Hinata, to which Shu replies that it's unclear. Hinata is expected to arrive here in about 2 weeks, and the force following her will arrive at around the same time. Rimuru wonders what he will do about the other 4 if he deals with Hinata himself. His assisting device responds that the only person who requires vigilance is Hinata herself, so Rimuru faces great difficulty in this matter. He blames himself silently, feeling like he used to be a great sage. Fedora intervened and asked him to leave the matter to him, suggesting the use of his dragon breath power, which Rimuru could describe as a mere warning shot. Rimuru got angry with him and asked him to be silent, stating that the last line of defense appears at the very last moment. His assisting device then spoke, stating that the possibility of it being like that is high, so there is still a chance to settle things peacefully. Shizu was worried about what happened to Hinata as well, and Rimuru didn't want to start killing each other without asking questions first. They decided to do their best to avoid casualties among the Holy Knights, also to prevent the killing of any of them at the same time. Meanwhile, Rimuru would defeat the enemy's leader. Sean mentioned that their team, Yomigari, consists of 100 members equivalent to the Steel Knights, so they should confront them. Rimuru got angry with her, because the rank of Yomigari members is only C in terms of skill, so they wouldn't be equivalent at all. Benimaru interrupted, saying he thinks her idea might succeed because Yomigari members have 2 additional skills, complete memory and self-renewal. It's unlikely that they would be killed by any ordinary attack, so their weakness might tempt the Holy Knights, who could benefit from it. He meant they are perfect to buy them time. Then he told Rimuru that if necessary, his own Kurenai would come to assist them. And if that's appropriate, Datta, the leader of Kurenai, will handle it. Datta said she trained her men to a level equivalent to what Sean gave her men, and she wants Rimuru to allow them to use that power to help him. Rimuru agreed, telling Shion he relied on her and depended on Datta for support. Now only the 4 individuals accompanying Hinata remain. Datta insisted she would deal with Hinata, leaving Feldora excluded, Geld hanging, and Diablo, Ranga, Hakuro, and Gabaru focusing on guarding the kingdom. This means that Benimaru, Shion, and Su are the only ones available to move. Benimaru agreed to this. Then Feldora suggested that he could use his physical copy to gather information, which would benefit Shion and her companions as well. Shion, as his secretary, assured Rimuru that she would always stay by his side. An alert came to Rimuru that, due to the possibility of them having individuals of similar strength, it would be wise to send some soldiers there as well. Rimuru then asked So if there was anyone among the Holy Knights traveling separately from Hinata, which seemed very dangerous. Feldora replied that he was sure all of them had a higher rank than A, but none of them seemed to have a significant presence. However, the strongest individuals are the most skilled at concealing their presence. The slime said to Sean, I want you to continue monitoring their separate strength, and Kurenai will be under Sean's command. Benimaru asked if anyone objected. Su and I can handle 2 of Saint Hinata's attendants, replied Sean. Rigard said, wait a moment. I think here I will be needed. Shuna responded, If we're talking about usage, then you also have me. Rigard added, and me too. I won't let God hog all the glory. The slime warned them, be careful. I think this matter is dangerous for you. Then these girls entered without hesitation. Sophia said, we want to participate in your meeting. Her friend told her not to enter in such a violent manner. Then Sophia said, allow us to help you as well and give us the opportunity to repay our debt to you. The slime said, but you both cannot act without Carrion's permission. Benamaru said, we can trust them. The slime said, I can rely on you if it turns into a battle, and I'll maintain our current difficult position. Focus immediately on annihilating your enemies. Priority is the lives of our friends. Learn that all of this is futile if one of you dies. I hope we can all surpass this as we did last time. The scene then shifts to Velzard saying, they haven't discovered what we're doing. The old man said, I heard that witch is smart, but she didn't meet my expectations. Still, we can't relax our defense. Granbell said, reckless schemes are weak in the face of pure military might. However, it seems they have uncovered your lies. Demrata laughed, saying, there's no problem. We gained something in return. Still, I want to gain your trust. He replied, I know that the East goal is to create chaos in the West so that you can sell weapons and then mobilize the Empire once we're drained. But let's get to the point. The elimination of Hinata, a goal we both share, he replied. The major obstacle in our path is the dragon human. Negotiations can be made with him now that he's been pacified by the Lord of Darkness. This means we have options. The next challenge we face is the threat of the Western Holy Church. He told him we consider this a threat. He said no, but the 5 archbishops are very vigilant. Once the Empire controls the West, why don't we control its economy? Velzard said, how can a small arms dealer like you speak like this to Granbell? He said, I'm surprised to see her distributing in the West. She asked him, do you know what this means? Granbell and Velzard asked her to step back, saying, we don't want to give preference to Ingratia or Falmouth. We cannot let our country fall into the hands of the Lord of Darkness. Damrata replied, saying, if you take away our sales channel through the Dwarf Kingdom, the Demon Lord Clayman, a good business partner is gone. We have retribution from Demon Lord Rimuru, and we will cooperate with you. Granbell said, we took care of Hinata. Velzard said Hinata is heading towards Tempest as planned. I will deal with the one working behind the scenes in the Kingdom of Falmouth. She asked Velzard to assist Edward in besieging Edmaris once he learns that Hinata is on her way to kill him. If Hinata succeeds in defeating Demon Lord Rimuru, he is not like the other Demon Lords. He's a threat that must be eliminated eventually, but we have taken the necessary measures. Velzard asked, how dare he underestimate us? Granbell said, they are the secret society ruling the world in the East. It may not be easy for them. The Satan they face is not just a primary Satan. In the end, I'm sure this isn't a problem for you, but otherwise fighters are also involved as a precaution. It's important to reduce the number of pawns available to the Demon Lord. And even if that's not possible, it will ensure victory for the Allied forces. He told Velzard to use Kerberos to stop the movements of the Demon Lord. Velzard accepted the task, stating that she had asked the Shadow of Blood to conduct maneuvers to push Sari and Gregor to move, all for the sake of the Rotsam family and her freedom. Maribel said, the Demon Lord is busy with Saint Hinata. We will seize this opportunity to suppress the civil war in Falmouth by intervening in the western regions on behalf of the new king, Edward, who will be indebted to you. Edward said, no one is allowed to interfere in Rotsam's garden. And so ends today's episode of this anime. Stay tuned for the next episode, so don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all the latest updates. The episode begins with Hinata and the others camping at night while the others are sleeping, leaving Ruro to wonder what Hinata will do next. As Hinata stands watch, she recalls the moment she realized the other paladins were pursuing her as soon as they caught up to her. She asked them why they were pursuing her, since she was only going to speak with them, and they did not inform her that no one would believe her after seeing how well prepared she was. Fritz said that she was never invited by Rue to come by herself and Hinata. I questioned whether they knew they were dealing with a demon. Here, Lord, she said that it was she who had enraged him, and this is her issue. She motioned for them to turn around, but they refused, and R said that the others wanted to go too. knowing that none of them could go. They left Renard and Drew to make their own decisions about who would go with them. After that, Hinata believes these guys are a group of idiots, but she isn't genuinely upset that they followed her. The action then shifts to Hinata's group in the Bloomant Kingdom, where they observe the kingdom's advancement. They have exquisite weapons composed of materials found in monsters, and their attire is comparable to that of Gracia. Fritz questions whether Tempest is having an effect on this, and Hinata says it definitely is. He finds it hard to believe that working with a demon has brought them such prosperity. Lord and they observe that most people in this area are happy again. He then says he's starting to get hungry, and they come across an odd-looking restaurant. When Hinata sees that it's a ramen restaurant, she dashes inside. The other paladins ask her what kind of food she's ordering. Tangata ramen, to be exact. After tasting the ramen, Hinata declares it to be fantastic. Observing her enjoyment makes her wonder how they managed to replicate the flavors to such an extent. After the others give it a try, and all declare that they have never tasted ramen quite like this, Hinata surmises that Ruru must be involved. The waitress then attends to their needs. Hinata quickly consumes one, burning her tongue in the process. But the other Guza find it hard to believe the paladin captain can't handle hot food. They discover that Hinata actually has a sensitive tongue, despite their initial belief that it must be something else. The others then give the Gua a try and think it's fantastic as well. Even after finishing the plate, they are still not satisfied. So they try to order more, but the waitress informs them that there isn't any more available. Since this is a brand new product that came directly from the Demon Lord, Hinata believes that she must have been trained to market it in this way. She also mentions that their stock is limited. They then settle their bill and depart from the store. Subsequently, we witness them traveling towards the vast Jura forest, believing it to be a perilous route. However, their journey has been so uneventful that they are becoming disinterested. They believe that this road is just as well paved as those in the Gray's capital, and Rita claims she isn't even able to detect the presence of monsters in this area. Hinata states that the highway is surrounded by an anti-magic barrier, and Bacchus assumes this to be the case. Why are so many blow merchants visiting this location? They attempt to prepare for an attack when they spot a monster ahead of them, but Hinata stops them and remarks that the monsters don't appear to be there to battle the goblin guards, then inquires to whether Hinata's group is an adventure. Hinata replies that it's something along these lines. They then issue a warning to her and the others not to fight, litter, or leave trash on the highway. If they intend to camp outside, they can use the water fountains every 10 kilometers. They can find patrol stations every 20 km if they want extra safety. And if they can afford it, they can stay at inns spaced 40 km apart. Every 10 kilometers, they also mention glowing stone tablets, but they advise against touching them since they are in charge of keeping the barrier intact. Hinata acknowledges that they will have to pay fines if they violate them, and thanks them for informing them of this. The scene cuts to Hinata and the others filling up water at the closest drinking fountain after the guards advise them to notify them if they encounter any problems. Hinata noticed that this place is similar to a campsite, and they are surprised that the drinking fountains are free. Realizing that Ruru is on a different level, she feels as though she is now irritated. She recalls that Yuki informed her that Ruru is free to do as he pleases. She believes he was correct, and that if he didn't have enough room, he couldn't have focused on these things. When Hinata and the others are later seen at an inn, the paladins conclude that Ruru must be an exceptionally talented leader based solely on the highway. He is a better governor than a demon, and he appears to be more committed to his position of authority than most barons. According to Lord Bacchus, they can apply a lot of what they have learned from him in Lilith. He is relieved that they never branded him a divine enemy. All they need to do now is hope that he will accept Hinata's sincere apologies. Hinata promises that her apology will be as genuine as possible. She will, however, agree to a duel if Rue continues to want one. Then, when she witnesses a goblin conversing with a human as if it were commonplace, she understands that Ruru genuinely wants to live among people. If this is the case, she wonders why he would want to fight her. And in the meantime, Ruru and Tempest finds out that Hinata's party is coming this evening. When Soy asks Ruru if he truly doesn't want him to poison Hinata, he replies that he doesn't care about Maru. then adds that Hinata arrived here naturally and without the use of magic, mentioning that this seems a bit daring to him. Ruru believes that this could be a diversion, and he wonders if it is. Soi replies that they are keeping quiet on the old path when he asks how the other group is doing. Ruru realizes they are in battle mode when he says they might not have noticed the other group of paladins if they hadn't seen them when they left Gracia. When we see that Renard is leading the other group and that G is with them, he believes it would be bad if they decided to use their holy field. Renard questions whether Vor's resurrection was a lie from the beginning after noticing how low the magical density is in this forest. He recalls that the clergy approached him after Hinata's party left the 7 days and said they wanted to speak with him in private about something. They spoke of Hinata's involvement with Lord Valentine, the demon, and the moment when they were all going to kill the demon. He confessed that to them, pleading for forgiveness from the Lord. This was hard for Renard to believe, and the 7-day clergy explained that Hinata was currently attempting to communicate with demon. Ruru Lord Hinata has the strongest faith of anyone he knows, so Renard was shocked to hear this and remarked that she would never betray them. The clergy of the 7 days informed him that these were merely questions at this time, and asked him to assist them in resolving these questions once and for all. When Renard asked what he needed to do, they instructed him to vanquish demon. They mentioned Hinata, Lord Ruru. If she is involved with him, would she rush to stop him, even though Renard said it might not be possible because Ruru has Vora on his side, since only the Holy Emperor and Lady Hinata have claimed to be aware of Vora's revival. The 7 days clergy questioned him about his belief that Vora has awakened. They said that not even Rahim had seen the dragon and Hinata firsthand. They claimed that Hinata had already encountered demon, possibly tricking the Holy Emperor. They believed that this was the moment she was enchanted by Lord Ruru. Since then, Hinata has been following Ruru's orders, and Renard questioned whether Hinata would actually betray them. He told the 7 days clergy that he would prove her innocence because he believed he was the only one who could save her. Subsequently, we witness Renard addressing the paladins, during which he states that they intend to take control of the entire town. As soon as he orders the soldiers to divide up and take their positions, Team Reborn attacks them. Renard realizes it's an ambush, and the guard questions whether Hinata has betrayed them. Subsequently, Soi informs Ruru that Shonan has managed to intercept the paladins and a combat has begun. Ruru believes Hinata had to make the decision to fight, and Hinata gets a magical call from Nicholas. Nicholas informs her that the 3 battle sages are taking part in Falas covertly. Hinata asks him if the Holy Emperor gave them the order to fight in the Civil War. Nicholas warns Hinata to beware of the 7-day clergy and says that while the specifics are unknown, it must mean something significant because they are defying her orders. However, Hinata's communication is interrupted and she is unable to hear the final part. She becomes aware that someone is preventing her from communicating, and she feels Renard getting close. She enters to investigate after learning that he is fighting with someone. Subsequently, Ruru informs the others that he has managed to intercept Hinata's magic call, and that he has discovered her intended destination. The battlefield. He says that he will be talking to Hinata and that they should move out as well. The others walk away after telling him they won't allow anything to get in the way of their fight. Then, we witness Team Reborn and Kaini engaged in combat with the Paladins, with the latter finding it difficult to defeat the members of Team Reborn. They are perplexed by the fact that their rivals are still standing after suffering severe injuries, and we witness that Team Reborn is eliminating the Paladins with a single blow. As they apprehend them, we discover that their weaponry is infused with potent sleep. Ruru and the others can take out a person with just 1 hit and medicine. Next, teleport to the battleground, where Ruru discovers that Karini and Team Reborn are performing better than he had anticipated. After eliminating half of the Paladins, Sean orders Gaba and Gabo to join the fight as well. Sean assures them that victory is within their grasp, and that securing victory against a more formidable opponent is how they advance to the next level. They are reluctant to act because this wasn't part of the plan. Gabwa becomes motivated. She charges into battle after hearing this. Sean uses her terrible food as motivation to force Gobo into the battle, even though he is still hesitant to give up on their plan. Ben Maru says Sean needs to be confident they can win, and Ruru wonders if this will all work out. Ruru believes there's no reason to hold back, and Sophia and ALBs observe that the team Reborn and Karini are not to be taken lightly. When Hinata and the others arrive at the battlefield and see that the paladins are losing, Soy says that if things go on this way, they might win this battle. Hinata then wonders why Renard and the guard are there. Now that the battle has begun, she believes there is no way they can resolve this through dialogue. As she notices Ruru, she learns he is carrying Onis and the 3 beers. She explains that Onis are unique, A-ranked threats who have evolved from ogres. When she realizes that Ruru and she both have 4 people with us, she knows this isn't a coincidence. She sees that Ruru has come and understands that she doesn't want anyone to stand in the way of their duel with Sean. Ruru informs her that none of this was in the plan when she remarks that everything is going as planned. Not listening to him, she departs to take up arms herself later. Hinata arrives to Ruru, and the 2 of them get ready to fight. Thus, today's episode ends. Stay tuned for the next episodes, and don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything new. The episode begins with Luminous looking at a frozen girl, and she thinks that the girl is beautiful. Lewis then comes there, and Luminous is not happy that he is interrupting her. But he mentions that there is a matter that needs her attention. He states that Hinata has moved to take down Demon Lord Ruru, and he fears that the 7 even days clergy might be involved in her actions. Luminous can't believe this, and Gunther is surprised that Lewis is bothering Luminous with such trivial nonsense. And Lewis states that they might lose Hinata if they leave this matter untouched. Gunther mentions that Lewis shouldn't have let Hinata cross swords with Ruru if this is the case, and Luminous stops the 2 of them. She thinks that the 7 days clergy are getting out of hand since Roy is gone now, and she might need some rearrangement to prevent this. She states that she doesn't have the time for this now, and she asks the 2 of them to follow her, but before leaving, she tells the frozen girl to wait for her. The scene then cuts to the Jura forest, and she unjoined the battle, seeing her power. Renard and Guard realize that she is not a pushover, and Renard can't believe that a mere follower of Ruru is emitting such an aura. Sean then introduces herself, and she mentions that she is Rimuro's #1 secretary. She states that they can either surrender or choose death, according to the orders that Ruru has given her, and she mentions that they should be smart enough to know what these words mean. Renard states that they do understand, but they have no intention of surrendering the paladins, then erect a holy field around them, and noticing this, Ruru states that they must really like this barrier spell. He tells Hinata that this is his territory, and since she staged military action within his borders, he deemed her hostile. He mentions that he is not nice enough to let her strike them first, and Hinata states that he took the right steps, but she has no idea why Renard and the others disobeyed her orders. Riaru doesn't believe her, and he states that she killed Rahim to pin the blame on them. Hinata is surprised to hear that Rahim is dead, and she realizes what's going on here. Ruru then asks her if she received his message, and she mentions that he wonders if this is her response, and Hinata states that this is something else. But she is sure that Ruru is not going to listen to her at this point. Ruru mentions that he wouldn't mind listening, but before that she will have to stop her forces and get them back to where they came from. Arnell wonders what's going to happen to Hinata if they call back their forces, and he mentions that since Rimuru called her here, there is no guarantee that he won't do anything to her. Benimaru then intervenes, and he states that Ruru and Hinata are the only ones allowed to speak right now, and he asks Arno to stay back as they never called him here. Arno then tries to attack Benimaru, but Benimaru blocks the attack, and Arno states that he didn't want to get in the way of Hinata's negotiations, and he was just prodding Benimaru a bit, but he didn't expect him to react. Benimaru mentions that he also wishes not to interfere, and he states that they should continue this elsewhere. The other paladins try to interfere with them, but the Beakers state that they will be the ones entertaining them, and they ask them to show them the might of the 10 great saints. Bus and Fritz leave the area to fight the 2 of them, and Soy then tells Rias that they should also get going. Kata and Ruru then prepare to fight as well. And meanwhile, Renard thinks that Cheyenne must be an Ani. He states that she should be on the level of a regional god. If this is true, and she might have the potential to become a demon, Lord herself, Shion, tells him that he is not exactly right. And she mentions that the two guys that their friends are fighting are honest, but she took a slightly different path in her evolution, and she is a wicked Oni. She mentions that they shouldn't expect her to play nice, and Renard states that she is just a blasphemous monster, and he mentions that he is going to purify her all of the paladins. Then attack Sean with their holy cannon, but Sean uses her sword to score a home run using their spells. Renard is surprised to see this, and he thinks that holy cannon disassembles magic particles, and it should be a sure-to-kill attack against monsters. He can't believe that Cheyenne didn't even try to dodge it, and she asks the paladins if this is their answer to her question earlier. We then see Ruru and Hinata crossing swords, and Hinata is surprised at how much Ryu has grown in such a short time. She notices that she can't use her usurper skill on him, and she realizes that this must mean that he is on the same level as Lady Luminous. Her desire to fight him diminishes even more after finding this out, but she knows that she can't stop, and she throws away her sword. She uses a spell, and Ruru wonders what she is doing. Rafael tells him that she is materializing holy elemental power and projecting it to an anti-monster equipment with holy alignment. We then see that Hinata has an armor and a different sword now, and she thinks that earlier Ruru asked her if she received his message, and she realizes that this must mean that he wants to settle their feud with a duel. Raru then thinks that Hinata's sword seems to be a cut above any weapon that he has seen before, and Rafael tells him that this is a legendary level sword. Ruru then notices that Hinat defenses are flawless, and he thinks that he would have let Kuro finish reforging his personal katana. If he knew that things were going to be like this, he then uses his dark flames on his sword, and the two of them cross blades. Afterward, Sean asks the paladins to surrender, while she is still being nice to them, and Guard tells her that she mustn't think that she has the upper hand just because she blocked their attacks. Once Cheyenne then puts down her sword, and she mentions that Rure actually gave her the order to avoid killing them as much as possible. She promises that she won't hit them if they surrender right now, and she will even let them try some of her famous cuisine. Renard tells her that paladins don't negotiate with monsters, and Sean states that, ideally, she would like to avoid killing them and make them submit by showing how much stronger she is from them. So she tries to make an offer to them. But Guard interrupts her, and she blasts his ear with an attack. This makes Guard angry, but seeing her pinpoint accuracy, Renard asks her to tell them her offer. Sean mentions that she wants them to hit her with their most powerful attack, and she will win if she is still standing after this, and they will have to surrender. Hearing this, Renard wonders if she really doesn't want to kill them, though, and Guard takes her up on that offer. He tells the other paladins to channel all of their elemental power to him, and he asks Renard to stabilize the power. Renard thinks that now is not the time to contemplate things, and he agrees to Guard's plan. Guard then concentrates the power of all the paladins to attack Zion, but Cheyenne slices through the attack using her Master Chef skill. She mentions that they should surrender to her now, and Renard thinks that they have completely lost, as she is far stronger than them. But Guard still doesn't want to give up, and he mentions that as long as the holy field is in place, she is completely helpless. He states that this is now a battle of endurance, and Sean mentions that she will have to kill them if they still refuse to admit defeat. Renard tries to stop Guard as Shin has the power to wipe them all out, but Guard mentions that a paladin never accepts defeat. Renard notices that something seems off about Guard, and he thinks that he can be a little short-tempered, but he is never like this. Shin then destroys the holy field using her sword, and the paladins are surprised to see. This Guard wonders how a monster can destroy the holy barrier, and Sean mentions that it was just a special barrier that modified the laws of matter. She states that it was no match for her Master Chef skill, and Guard realizes that she has the ability of certain outcome, and she forcefully pulled out the outcome she desired. Both Renard and Guard then surrender, and Renard hopes that she will give their men fair treatment. She mentions that there is no need to worry, as Ruru is a kind man, and she states that he was hoping to talk things out with their leader. Instead, Renard then notices that Rimuru and Hinata are fighting, and he realizes that the doubts of the 7 days clergy were unfounded. He asks Sean why the two of them are fighting if Ruru only wanted to talk, and Sean states that they only started to fight because the paladins brought their forces into their territory. Renard realizes that this is all his fault as he let the paladins here to prove her innocence. And meanwhile, we see that Ruru is barely keeping up with Hinata's attacks. He mentions that he thought that he would have an easier time defeating her, and Hinata realizes that only Ruru's physical abilities have grown since the last time she saw him. His techniques are still unpolished, and they are no match for the skills that she has developed in the past 10 years. Hinata then remembers about Shio, and she thinks that, after learning all of Shisu's skills, she left her as she was scared of losing her. She wasn't able to show her gratitude to her as she was awkward, but she still has the experience that she got from her. She then crosses swords with Ruru once more, and she almost manages to hit him. Ruru thinks that it will be bad if Hinata manages to land a hit, and Rafael tells him that the blow wouldn't be lethal, but it will lower a large amount of his energy. Ruru thinks that it's good, that it won't be lethal, but he will still pay dearly for it if he takes it on the wrong side. Rafael informs him that Hinata's sword emits a special wavelength that overwrites the laws of matter, and it can penetrate Ruru's multi-layered barrier. Ruru thinks that this is bad, and Hinata attacks him again. He thinks that right now the best strategy might be to wait for Hinata to wear herself out, as he won't get tired no matter how long he fights, but he notices that Hinata has started to move faster. Some of her attacks manage to get through to Ruru, and Rafael tells him that he is getting lured to the area that she plans to attack. Ruru asks Rafael if there is anything he can do right now, and Rafael learns an ability called Predict. Here, attack Ruru uses the ability, and he notices that he can see Hinata's attacks before she performs them. He can see which of them are feints, and he only deflects the attacks that are coming for him. He thinks that he can win like this, and Hinata consents. That Ruru is fighting differently now. It's like he knows exactly what she is going to do next, and she realizes that he is reading her movements more accurately than her compute prediction. She then notices that the other paladins are finished with their battles, and she tells Ruru that they should also end this with the next strike. She mentions that her next move is going to be dangerous, and she asks him if he is willing to accept it. Rafael tells Ruru that she can sense no desire to kill from Hinata, and Ruru wonders what's going on, as he thought that she is here to kill him. He thinks that something did seem odd to him from the start, but he doesn't have the time to ponder over this right now. He asks Hinata if he will win if he withstands her next attack, and he tells her to promise that she won't mess around with his nation. After this, she does, and she mentions that she only agreed to this duel because he requested it. She states that she just wanted to have a discussion with him, and Ruru is surprised to hear that he requested this duel. Hinata states that this is what he said in his message, and Ruru remembers that in his message, he said that he hoped to talk things out with her, and he mentioned that he will take her on. If she doesn't like this idea, he said that they should settle this on their own. If she has a problem with talking things out, but he would prefer a verbal discussion. He mentions that he never said anything about having a duel, and Hinata then prepares her attack. She states that normally, this is a sure-to-kill attack, and she attacks. Rimuru Rafael tells him that this attack is unblockable and unavoidable, and it suggests Ruru to sacrifice his Be-Lub skill to cancel out this attack. Ruru agrees, and he stays standing even after the attack. The paladins are surprised to see this, but his followers expected this outcome, and Rimur then falls down. Hinata mentions that Ruru must have taken that attack head-on purposely, and Ruru wonders what she is talking about, as no one would intentionally take on an attack like that. But he notices that Rafael is acting suspicious, and he realizes that it was her doing. Hinata then states that she has lost, and Rafael detects thought interference coming from the sword that Hinata dropped earlier. Hinata realizes that this is the doing of the 7 days clergy, and the sword attacks Ruru. But she protects him. Thanks for watching. The rest of the parts will be on my channel. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to keep getting new. The episode begins with Niddlemurum in Falmouth, and Dammer mentions that this land is going to become the Eye of the Storm. Soon he states that Edward is going to say that Jan Edium Maris embezzled, the funds meant for Demon Lord Ruru, and he will mention that the upper class was infuriated by this, and answering to the public will take down Idiom Maris. The new King Edward will then deploy his troops, but Yom and Idiom Maris aren't going to accept these false reports. Yon has also received reinforcements from Ruru, and a war is inevitable right now. Datta thinks that Demon Lord Ruru is too naive for not abandoning Yom, and by now Hanada should have found out that he lied to her. He was hoping to eliminate her here, but it might be wiser for him to pull back. He mentions that the mission assigned to him didn't end in failure, and the problem now is just his unfinished business. His maid realizes that he is talking about taking down the demon who killed Rahim, and she states that the 5 elders are asking a lot from him. Dan mentions that he has heard that the magic raisin is serving that demon, and if this is a demon who can defeat Raisin, it might not be any ordinary archdemon. He thinks that there is nothing that they can do if this is the case, and he mentions that they will leave this nation after leaving behind an observer. The maid wonders what they are going to do with the demon hunters that they brought from home, and Dammer states that they should leave them as souvenir. For the new king, he mentions that they will push the demon problem to Edward, and he thinks that he should also leave another gift for the new king. The scene then cuts to Ad Maris's Viscounty in the Kingdom of Falmouth, and Edward thinks that he was worried when he heard that Demon Lord Ruru is siding with Yom. But now he has the 3 battle sages of Lelis, and he has heard that Hanada is also on her way to slay Ruru. He thinks that the heavens have not forsaken him yet, and the only problem he had was to find a just cause to move his army to Niddle. But thanks to Earl Nidal's request from the Eastern Merchant, this has also been taken care of. We find out that this is the gift that Datta mentioned earlier, and Edward thinks that Datta has also provided him with a team which specializes in demon hunting. He states that all of his problems have been solved, and he tells his army that they will commence their attack. Now he tells his general named Gaston to lead 5,000 troops to attack the town where Yum is hiding, and Sel mentions that they should take Gregory with them. He states that Falmouth has lost many of their soldiers in the battle against Ruru, and he is sure that Gregory will prove useful to him. Edward is happy to hear this, and Gregory secretly asks as if he is asking him to babysit these simpletons, as mentions that this is just a front, and he states that his real target will be the demon that killed Rahim according to the rumors. The demon is with Yum as reinforcements, and he wants Gregory to lure him out. Gregory understands, and he leaves with General Gaston Glenda, then notices that she can't see Datta anywhere, and she realizes that he has run away. She thinks that she can just sacrifice the demon hunters if she needs to, and we then see Diablo spying on the enemy from above. He mentions that he is going to punish every one of them for embarrassing him in front of Ruru, and he notices that 2 of the great saints are with the king, and one of them is leaving with 5,000 soldiers. He telepathically tells Hakuro that one of the great saints is heading towards him, with 5,000 soldiers, and Ranga should be able to deal with him. He mentions that the man is related to Lelis, and this is where the rumors about him originated from. He asks Hakuro to tell Ranga to capture him alive as they can use him in their negotiations. Hakuro states that he will send the Goblin Riders and the Dragonettes with Ranga, and he tells Diablo to fight without any worries, as he will take care of things there. Diablo then goes to the enemy camp and he greets the king, along with 2 of the battle sages. The soldiers take defensive position after seeing him, and the news reporters around the area also gather around Diablo, protects the reporters with a barrier as he doesn't want to harm them, and Edward asks Diablo what brings him here. He mentions that he is just here to give them a warning, and he states that they should send their forces back immediately and make peace with Yum if they don't want to have a taste of his terror. Edward laughs at his proposal, and he mentions that there is no need for a demon to meddle with the affairs of their nation. He states that he knows that Adaris and the others are just planning to charge double reparations from them, and he mentions that this Ruru guy must really be greedy for money. Hearing him talk about Ruru like this makes Diablo angry, and Edward states that he has proof of their misdeed in their hands, and he shows everyone a recording of Rahim's death. This doesn't show the person who killed Rahim, and Diablo states that this proves nothing. Edward mentions that Diablo can't talk his way out of this, as he has proof against him, and Diablo orders him to be silent. He states that he doesn't want to engage in a battle of wits with someone as simple-minded as him, and he mentions that they should do a little test. He states that if the humans here can defeat him, then him or his master will not take any further action against them. But he warns them that he has never lost to anyone before. He states that they should be prepared to face the consequences of slandering his master. And the king gets scared and he orders the demon hunters to kill Diablo. The demon hunters then use chains to bind Diablo, and they ask him to not underestimate their anti-demon strategies from the east. Diablo asks them if they are done with their preparations, and he tells them to give him the starting signal when they are ready. They realize that he let himself be caught on purpose, and they mention that they are going to make him regret being so cocky. They then attack him with non-magic infused lightning, and they mention that this is going to destroy his body, and there is nothing he can do. The others also think that this might defeat Diablo, but it has no effect at all. The demon hunters ask him why the lightning didn't work on him, and Diablo states that it was just too pathetic. He mentions that he is also equipped with strong resistance to natural influences, and he then begins the test. He releases his aura, and everyone inside the barrier passes out, except for the leader of the demon hunters and the two battle sages. The reporters are surprised to see him use. Conquerors Hockey and Diablo can't believe that 3 of them managed to pass his test. He mentions that they deserve praise for withstanding his lord's ambition, even though he was holding back, and the demon hunter mentions that Diablo is bluffing as only demon. Lord-class monsters can use Lord's ambition. It's impossible for an arch-demon to become a demon. Lord and Diablo tells him that demons do have a limit to their amount of energy, but it's possible for them to evolve to the next stage when the right conditions are met. He states that they should already know the demon lord called Red, and he mentions that they just need to live for 2,000 years and build their strength to maximum. For this to happen, he mentions that since they are from the east, they should also know about White, and the demon hunter realizes who he is dealing with. He is about to piss his pants with fear, and he realizes that there is no way he can win. He begs for Diablo to spare his life, but Diablo wants to have some fun with him. Since he passed his test, the demon hunter apologizes to him for everything, saying that he will do anything. Diablo asks, and Diablo tells him to get the unconscious people out of the barrier. And Glenda then understand that Diablo is not an ordinary archdemon, but they still don't know who he really is, and they prepare to fight him. He introduces himself to Diablo, and he asks him to do the same, and Diablo introduces himself. And he mentions that he is just a butler working for MAOU. He wonders why Diablo is hiding his true identity, and he attacks him. Diablo manages to parry all of his attacks, and S mentions that Diablo shouldn't beat around the bush by talking about Red and White, and he should just tell them who he is. Diablo then reveals that he has evolved into a demon peer and the demon hunter leader. Faints, hearing this, S is also turning pale after finding this out, and he thinks that demon peers are stuff of legends, and they are said to even surpass demon lords. He can't believe that Ruru gave a name to someone like this, and since S is not doing anything. Glenda attacks Diablo with a throwing knife. She notices that the attack didn't have any effect, and Diablo explains that physical attacks don't work on him. S and Glenda are at a loss for words after hearing this, but they find out that it's really true. S then asks Glenda to fight Diablo with him, but he notices that she is running away. S thinks that he has no choice but to buy time until Gregory returns, and we see that Ranga has engaged Gregor's forces. Gregory and the others notice Ranga flying, and they don't have any way to counter this. The general asks Gregory what he should do, but before Gregory can relay any orders, Ranga wipes out the entire army single-handedly, and he engages Gregory. We see that the Goblin Riders and the Dragonets are on their way to the battle as well, and they think that at this rate there won't be anything left for them to do. They still continue the chase, and by the time they get to the battlefield, they notice that everyone has been defeated by Ranga. We see that Ranga is playing with Gregory like he is a ball, and Gideon stops him from accidentally killing Gregory. Ranga states that this human seems to want to play more, and Gabda tells him that Ruru will scold him if he doesn't stop now, and Ranga stops immediately. Soke then tells Gaston to retreat his forces right now, and they will not chase them. Soldiers run away faster than Saitama going to assail. We then see us continuing his fight, hoping that Gregory will be here any minute now, and Diablo asks him to show him some more of his skills. then tries to use an AA Imbu attack on Diablo. But Diablo disassembles. The aura on the blade before it can hit him, ES tries to use the same attack a few more times, but Diablo parries all of them as then realizes that Diablo can kill him at any time, but he is choosing not to as he has no intention of killing him. He thinks that there is no reason for someone as strong as him to go out of his way to kill Rafael. And he realizes that this is not the demon who killed him. He then remembers that Hinata said that they shouldn't interfere with this matter. But the Archbishop was killed right after she left, and it was like someone timed it. He realizes who was behind this all, and 3 of the 7 days clergy come there. They mention that they will take care of the demon with their magic. And Diablo realizes that they are here to clean up evidence. The clergy then attack the reporters and the scene. Cuts to Tempest. Hynet tries to heal herself. But her healing magic doesn't work and Raru uses a full potion on her, but this also doesn't have any effect. Rafael tells him that Hinata has high magic resistance and her body automatically disassembles. Magicals and neutralizes their effects are no mentions that only holy magic works on Hinata, and Rayos tries to heal Hinata with her holy magic. But 2 of the 7 days clergy come there. They bind Raz and the other paladins, and they mention that they are here to punish Hinata for violating their orders. Thanks for watching. The rest of the parts will be on my channel. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to keep getting new anime recap updates. The episode begins with thinks that these must be the guys that Edelman talked about, and he tells them to not get in his way. He mentions that him and Hinata have already settled things, and he is not going to let her die. The 7 days clergy mention that they can't allow this, as Hinata has ignored the will of their Lord Luminous, and they can't let this go unpunished. Renard tells them to stop acting as he knows that they tricked him and they have been meaning to have Hinata dead. From the beginning, Guard then stabs Renard, and he means that Renard was the one who was conspiring with the rebel Hinata, and he tricked all of them. Seeing this, Bacchus and Fritz wonder what's going on. Raphael then informs Rimuru that Guard's wavelength is similar to the one that interfered with the sword, and Rimuru tells Sean to strip off Guard's cover. He mentions that Guard might be one of the 7 days. Clergy and Guard removes his cover, and we see that Ruru was right. The 7 days clergy then mentioned that Ruru should not be hasty to use violence, as this can lead to a war. And Ruru tells them that this is his nation, and here they perform body checks on suspicious visitors. Diablo then telepathically contacts Ruru, and he informs him that he just found out that a group called the 7 Days clergy were responsible for killing Rafael. They have been pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and he is facing 3 of them right now. He wonders what he should do with them, and Ruru wonders if he can provide proof that they are the real killers. Diablo mentions that they have journalists from all around the world as eyewitnesses, and Ruru gives him the permission to exterminate them. Ruru then orders Benim, Maru, and Soy to work with Sean and capture the 7 Days clergy. They can take any necessary measure if the clergy resist, and the 7 Days clergy wonder if he is all right with starting an all-out war against them. Ruru states that they shouldn't talk about starting wars, as they were the ones who killed Archbishop Rahim, and they also tempered with his message of peace. He mentions that trying to pin the blame on his butt was a mistake, as their cover has been blown now, and the paladins can't believe that the 7 Days clergy were behind all this. The 7 Days clergy then mentioned that, since Hinata is already dying, they aren't going to miss this opportunity, and they will dispose of the rest of them as well as they have found out the truth. Benny Maru then attacks them, but they dodge and they erect a barrier around everyone else. Soy and Benny Maru attack the barrier, but their attacks have no effect on it, and Sean hits the barrier with her sword. The 7 Days clergy mentioned that this also won't have any effect, but the barrier cracks. Ruru is surprised to see this, and Raphael informs him that Sean has altered the space using the certain outcome effect of her master chef. Skilled Ruru can't believe this, and Raphael tells him that this attack might even be effective against him. The Estes clergy then think that at this rate their magic circle will break completely, and they mention that they will have to release their spell now. They then use a spell called Trinity Break to attack, but Raphael uses Beeb to consume. The attack Ruru thinks that they sacrificed Beeb earlier to survive. Hinat attack and Rafael mentions that she prepared a backup copy, so it wasn't a problem. Ruru states that she could have told him this earlier, and the 7 days clergy then prepare an even stronger attack called Trinity Disintegration. Ruru notices that the Alub isn't going to work against this, and Rafael states that they can just use the ultimate skill called Yule's Absolute Defense. Ruru remembers that this is the skill that he got when he was consolidating his abilities, and he wonders why they didn't use this to defend against Hinata's attack. He uses this ability, and he mentions that he is going to have a talk with Rafael about this later after the attack the 7 days. Clergy think that Ruru must be dead, but when the dust settles down, they find out that he is still alive. They think that this is impossible as there is no creature in this world which can survive. Disintegration and Remur mentions that it's their turn to attack now. Him and the Honest prepare to attack, and the 7 days clergy mention that they are the guardians of humanity, and the followers of Lord Luminous aren't going to be quiet about this. They mention that they are going to step back this time, but the rage of their Lord Luminous will burn them to ashes. Eventually they try to escape, but a gate appears behind them, and from it come out Luminous and Lewis. The 7 days clergy bowed down to Luminous, and she states that she seems to have caused trouble for Ruru, and Maru is surprised to find out that demon, Lord Valentine, is actually God Luminous. The scene then cuts to Falmouth, and we see that Diablo has protected everyone from the attack of the 7 days clergy. The 7 days clergy are surprised that he was able to defend against their attack, and they mention that they will show him their sacred power. Diablo then tells everyone that it's clear that the 7 days clergy intended to kill them from the beginning, but they shouldn't worry as he is going to protect all of them. The reporters ask him what he wants from them in return, and Diablo mentions that he only seeks one thing from them. He states that he wants them to spread the truth about the killing of the Archbishop, and the reporters happily mention that they will do this, and they will write about how Diablo saved them, and they ask him to protect. Diablo then promises to save everyone, except for the king, and the king wonders what he has done to deserve. This Diablo tells him that he has mocked the great Ruru, and this is a crime worth 1,000 deaths. Edward then begs Diablo to save him as well, and he states that he will give him everything he can. He will give him money, power, and even the throne itself. Diablo then thinks that right now, Yom the champion is guarding Edie and Morris, and he mentions that he believes that Yom is most qualified to lead Falmouth. He asks Edward what he thinks, and Edward agrees with him in fear. He then tells the reporters that he wishes to announce Yom as his successor, and he tells them to write about this as well. The reporters praise Yom as the champion king, as this is their only ticket to being saved, and Diablo thinks that now that his original plan is a success, he just needs to take care of the garbage. The 7 days clergy then try to use Trinity Break on Diablo, but Diablo mentions that he will make them taste despair, and he activates his skill called Despair Time. The S-Days clergy then find themselves in a world of emptiness, and they wonder what happened to their spell. They can't believe that it has disappeared, and Diablo tells them that they can reflect upon their foolishness in the deepest part of the abyss, and he crushes them. He thinks that he should report this to Ruru and the scene. Cuts to Tempest. Lewis introduces himself as the Holy Emperor and Luminous as their god, and the Paladins are surprised to hear this. Ruru wonders why a demon lord is acting as a god, and Rafael mentions that she has the power to make an environment to effectively rule humans. Luminous then states that she told Hinata to restrain herself, and she casts resurrection magic on her. Ruru wonders how a demon lord can use holy magic, but he realizes that now is not the time for questions. We then see Hinata remembering her past, and we find out that she was summoned to this world when she was heading to her high school entrance ceremony. She was summoned amidst a bandit attack, and seeing her, the bandits thought that they could sell her for a pretty good price. They mentioned that they should have some fun with her before selling her, and Hinata thought this place was no different from home. It's a world filled with despair. She thought that her father started gambling, and he often subjected her mother to violence, and all she ever wanted was to fix her broken home. But after her father's death, her mother's heart broke, and she kept having everything precious taken from her. She thought that she is done letting things be taken from her, and she gained the skill Usurper. She then dealt with one of the bandits, and she thought that survival of the fittest is the only unchanging law in this world. and there is no error in her calculations, and she gained the skill mathematician. She then dealt with the rest of the bandits, and this was when Shishu found her afterwards. Hinata opens her eyes in the present, and seeing her up, close Ruru thinks that she looks like an innocent girl. He thinks that it's been a decade since she has been summoned to this world, and he tries to calculate her age, but Hinata asks him if he is thinking something rude. Ruru states that he is not, and she wonders how long he is going to stare at her. He states that it was a delight to his eyes, and she mentions that he has no tact. She thinks that he mustn't have been popular with women like this, and he states that he was known as a considerate and reliable guy. Luminous then asks the 7 Even Days clergy if they have any excuse, and Diablo reports to Remu that the job is complete. He mentions that everything went according to plan, and Hinata then heals Renard afterwards. Luminous sentences the 7 Days clergy to death, and they beg her for mercy. But she mentions that she will do them the courtesy of killing them with her own hands. She then kills them all, and Ruru states that now that everything is settled, they should take this elsewhere and talk about the future of Tempest and Lulus. The scene then cuts to the last of the 7 Days clergy waiting to receive a report from the rest of them, and Nicholas asks him if something is the matter, as he seems worried. He mentions that he has recently discovered that Ruru's message was tampered, and he mentions that he doesn't care about their objectives, even if they want to gain the favor of their Lord Luminous or take advantage of her power. The clergy mentions that this is a strange thing to say, as their god lies only in their hearts, and Nicholas mentions that God Luminous does exist, and he has known this for a long time now. He only pretended not to notice, because Hinata wanted to keep this a secret, and the clergy tries to take action against Nicholas, but Nicholas kills him using disintegration. He mentions that he is not going to let anyone harm Hinata, and he states that, for him, Hinata is the only god in this world. We then see that Gran Bell was somehow possessing the clergy, that Nicholas killed, and Maria Bell states that Tempest is dangerous. Gran Bell wonders if she is talking about the arrival of the angels, and she mentions that she is not. She states that Ruru seeks to rule the world, though Economy and Gran Bell finds it hard to believe. But Maria Bell mentions that this is true, and this is why they must crush him. Gran Bell believes her, and Maribel mentions that she is going to succeed the next time Ruru and the others then return to Tempest. And seeing him, Vora wonders if it's time for the last line of defense to act. Ruru states that they won't need him. This time Endora can't believe this. He notices Demon Lord Luminous with Ruru, and he calls her out, and the paladins find out that their god Luminous is actually the demon. Lord Luminous Valentine Luminous then gets angry at Vora, and the two of them fight. The fight continues till evening, and Luminous uses an attack called Embrace Drain on Vora, and Rafael explains to Ruru that this attack can drain the target's energy. At the same time, it also transfers pain and discomfort to the target. Ruru is surprised that not even a spiritual creature like Vora can resist this, and the paladins feel sorry for him. Luminous mentions that she is going to take out all her frustrations on Vora, and Vora asks Ruru to save him afterwards. Everyone relaxes in the hot springs, and they have some food and party hard. And that concludes today's episode of this anime. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to receive all the latest updates. The episode begins with Gran Bell talks with Datta, and he can't believe that Datta fled the demon even before getting involved with it. DL mentions that there was nothing he could do there, and he states that Gran Bell should have already received the report. He mentions that the demon was a monster far beyond his imagination, and he states that Gran Bell also failed to dispose of Hinata, and he made her connection with Ruru stronger than before. Grandel mentions that the long-standing Falmouth will now fall, and a new nation will be born in its place. This is exactly what Ruru wanted, and this means that the scheme of the organization is in shambles. Ruru is growing the forest of Jura into the world's center of economy, and they are not going to stand for this. Any further public activity will be ill-advised, and the same is true for the East as well. Datta understands that there is no point to trying to pin the blame on each other, and Gran Bell mentions that they should work together to stop this threat. But Dimmer states that he does wish to maintain a good relationship with his family. But their organization has no reason to be hostile to Ruru. He mentions that it will be difficult for him to do anything in the Western nations with Hinata knowing his face, so he is going to return to his homeland and provide grants with someone else to replace him. He mentions that they are going to continue their transactions as before, and he leaves Gramble, then wonders if Datta thinks that he can take advantage of him. And he states that once this matter is done, these guys will be the next on his list. The scene then cuts to Ruru having a meeting with Luminous and the others, and he explains that, after the others found out about the identity of Luminous, Hinata apologized to them for keeping this a secret. The Paladins accepted her apology, and they mentioned that she is the one whom they have their faith in, and not God Luminous. He mentions that now they're going to discuss the future of their two nations, and Hinata states that when they received the request of Rahum to mobilize the Paladins, the church agreed because it couldn't acknowledge the existence of a nation of monsters. She also wanted to get back at Rimuru personally, and Ruro wonders if this was because of Shiyu. She states that it was, and looking back, she realizes that she was being used back then. Ruro wonders whom she was being used by, and she states that it was the merchants from the... Ruru mentions that Clayman was also close to some merchants, and he thinks that those merchants must be from the east as well. Hinata states that the merchants told her that Ruru killed Shishu, and he was staying at Ingratia. Ruru mentions that she couldn't have picked a worse timing for her attack, and he states that just remembering about this pisses him off. He then lets out his aura in anger, and Luminous tells him to stop with the coercion. Ruru apologizes for this, and he states that it's clear now that the merchants from the east were responsible for everything. Those guys were likely the ones who set Adia Maris on them, and Hinata states that there is no doubt about this as Rahim made this much clear in their questioning. Ruru then realizes that Clayman was manipulating Falmouth from behind the scenes, and the Eastern merchants mediated things for him. Clayman was trying to awaken himself as a true demon. Lord and Falmouth was trying to take control of Tempest. The Eastern merchants were also involved in the process. And lastly, that person engineered this all. Luminous realizes that Ruru is talking about the person that gave Clayman the mind control stone, and she states that it's impressive that someone as simple-minded as Clayman never divulged this person's identity. Until the end, Ram Maru wonders if he was talking about the 7 days clergy, and Luminous mentions that it can't be. Lewis states that they can't fully ignore this possibility, as the 7 days clergy craved Luminous love energy, because it has been 100 years since their last ceremony. Ruru wonders, what's love energy? And Luminous explains that, since they were all humans, they were bound to get old without her energy, and Lewis tells her that they were desperate to ensure that she didn't make any other favorites. Hinata realizes that this is why they tried to kill her, and LS mentions that they probably intended to awaken Clayman and have him fight her. Hinata realizes that they tried to pin her against Rue, because Clayman was defeated, and Rian notices that there are supposed to be 7 clergies, but they only killed 6 of them. Hinata tells them that a cardinal named Nicholas dealt with the last one, and Luminous wonders how he managed to defeat Grand Bell. Hinata states that he managed to take him by surprise with a disintegration spell that he had set up in advance, and Luminous can't believe that Grand Bell fell to a trap like this. Hinata wonders if Grand Bell was Grand's real name, and Luminous states that it was. And he was also known as the Hero of the Light, and the two of them even fought once. Ruru is relieved to find out that this was all the doing of the Eastern merchants, and he mentions that he would have started to suspect Yuki if he didn't find out about this. The Paladins realize that he is talking about Yuki. Kagurazaka and Ramuro tells them that he was the most suspicious person around, but there is no reason for him to make him fight. Hinata mentions that they can't rule him out as a suspect completely, and she states that it's a little early to assume that the mastermind is gone. Benamaru mentions that they should inform everyone about this, and Rimuru states that they should keep a close eye on this. As they move forward, Shah then serves everyone some scones and fried potatoes, and Ruru tries to talk to them about their future relations. But Hinata mentions that before this, she would like to make sure if Ruru has accepted their apology. Ruru mentions that he has, and Luminous states she would like to compensate him in some way, as this incident was completely their fault, and Hinata agrees with her. Ruru states that they can officially recognize Tempest as a nation and form diplomatic ties with it. In this case in Luminous, she mentions that she has no intention of being close friends. But she does have a score to settle with Vora. Ruru thinks that he can offer Vora as a sacrifice, in the worst-case scenario. And Vora wonders if Rimuru is thinking something cruel, and Rimuru states that he is not Luminous, then tells Ruru that they should call a truce for now. And she mentions that she will open international relations with him for 100 years. She states that he can consider this. Her apology, and Hinata wonders if she is sure about this. Luminous mentions that she is, and Fritz states that there shouldn't be any issue with this, as they would all be dead right now if Ruru were truly evil. As agrees with him as Soy was a gentleman, and are no mentions that they need to cast their prejudices against monsters. Renard wonders how they are going to explain this in the framework of their faith's teachings, and he states that it might greatly shake people's faith in the Western Holy Church. Luminous tells him that failing to protect those teachings doesn't count as betraying her, and she mentions that these were basically a bunch of rules made by the leaders at the time. Everyone is surprised to hear this, and Luminous states that to her faith is the most important thing and the teachings don't matter. She tells them that all of them here can cast their holy magic, thanks to their faith in her, and Renard mentions that all of them have spent their lives following that doctrine, and it won't be good if they throw it away so easily. Hinata states that the other nations would have noticed that 100 crusaders made their way here, and the journalists also saw a battle. Sage, defeated Lewis, mentions that it could lead to a lot of confusion if it became known that Hinata and the crusaders were defeated, and Ruru states that in this case, they should say that him and Hinata duel to a draw. Hinata wonders if he is fine with this, as humans have only defeated a demon lord a handful of times, and Renard states that since Ruru is a new demon lord, the other forces might look down on him because of this. Ruru asks Benimaru if he can think of any forces here which might try to interfere with them. Benimaru states that he can't, and he mentions that if anyone is foolish enough to try this, he will twist their head off. Hinata states that she also doesn't have any objection in this case, and Fritz mentions that they should take this opportunity to announce to the world that this nation and its people aren't evil at all. The others agree with him, and Ruru states that they should also mix King Gazelle into this and sign a 100-year friendship treaty if they can get Gazelle to guarantee that they won't attack people. It's bound to change a few minds. Hinata agrees that building a little trust will help them convince people, and Lewis states that for their further interactions, he is going to let Bacchus and Arno stay in Tempest. Ruru mentions that they will also build a Luminous church here in this case. And the scene then cuts to Luminous and the others leaving. Before they leave, Ruru gives Hinata back her rapier that he swallowed last time, and he mentions that he has also improved this. Hinata thanks Ruru for this, and they try to leave. But Ruru thinks that he should at least invite them to stay the night as a polite remark, and he does so. Hinata asks him what they will be having for dinner, and after hearing that they are having teriyaki, they all agree to stay. The scene then cuts to everyone partying at night, and we notice that Ruru can get drunk now. He explains that at the last party he found out that Luminous can weaken her poison nullification so that she can get drunk, and he begged her to teach this to him. We then see that Hinata is happy to see Rice after so long, and she can't believe how perfectly Ruru has replicated the food from their old world. She is surprised that he managed to create such a comfortable environment in just 2 years, and Ruru mentions that he is not done yet. He states that the transport and communication in this world is still slow, and there is too little entertainment. Hinata wonders how he is going to bring entertainment in this harsh world where people are working desperately just to see another day. Ruru states that he is going to make sure that monsters are no longer a threat, and he reveals that they are trying to make Yima king and build a new nation. They are going to use this to get the Western nations into their sphere of influence, and Hinata wonders what he is planning. Ruru mentions that he plans to get human society to recognize them, and he states that this part is already halfway done, as the leaders of many nations are aware of them now, and merchants and adventurers are spreading rumors about them. They are making safe and efficient trade routes as they speak, and right now only those who can use magic can use communication crystals, but they're trying to use sticky thread and Magzi steel to send transmissions over threat. They have figured out that this can be used for smooth communication, and using this, they can build communication networks between villages and nations. Hinata wonders if Ruru should be sharing this kind of confidential information with them, and Ruru thinks that he might have said too much because of the alcohol. Rafael then restarts the poison nullification skill, and she makes it so that it can't be adjusted for the time being, and Ruru gets sober. Hinata then tells Ruru that the angels are going to attack him if she goes this far, and Lewis explains that the angels come running to cities that have become too far. Advanced Luminous mentions that she would love to exterminate those pests, but everyone would find out her identity if she did that, and Ruru states that they will just fight back if the angels come for them. Hinata expected him to say something like this, and she mentions that they will be fighting on the same side when that time comes. Lumen states that she also doesn't have any intention of watching her city being destroyed a second time, and Remur mentions that after this, the Holy Empire suddenly announced the Dwarven Kingdom as a land of humans it could potentially become allies with, and they also formally announced diplomatic relations with the Juror Tempest Federation. The scene then cuts to Yuki talking to Datta, and Datta can't believe that the Five Elders tried to make him fight a demon who was the equal of Blancs in the Empire. Yuki states that a frontal assault against Ruru would be a bad idea in this case, and Datta doubts that Cerberus is going to survive. An attack like this, Yuki mentions that he tried to use Hinata to get back at Ruru a little, but it didn't work, and he states that they should lay low for the time being. Datta mentions that the Five Elders were all bark and no bite, and he states that he would have had to face Ruru himself if Yuki didn't contact him. Yuki mentions that he couldn't let Datta die as it would ruin his plans, and Datta is glad that he managed to stay alive. Yuki then tells Datta to not go all out right now, and he mentions that he still wants to wait and see how all this is going to play out. Datta states that he will return to his homeland and send Misha to replace him in this case, and Yuki agrees to this. Then wonders how they are going to wind down the slave trade that he has been working on here, and Yuki states that they should just shut down the Orthus slave market, as they are a pain in the ass. Wonders if they are releasing the rare monsters at Misha Ak Kidna Club, and Yuki states that everything that's designated as confidential should be treated the same as always, as they still have. A link to the Rasso family data then leaves, and we see that Kazarin was listening in on this conversation. She wonders why Yuki wants to dismantle Orthus now, and Yuki states that he wants that person to play the good guy in this hearing. This Kazarin mentions that Yuki always comes up with interesting ideas, and Yuki asks her if he can let her handle this. She states that he can, and she asks him to call her Kigali from now on. She explains that she is not going to use the name Kazar until she has her revenge against Leon, and Yuki tells Kigali to get to work. So today's episode ends. Stay tuned for the upcoming episode, so don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive everything new. The episode begins with Ruru states that the date for Tempest's large-scale event called the Founders Festival has been decided, and everyone is busy preparing for that. He mentions that each of the executives is set to announce some kind of project, and we find out that Vista and Gabby Rue are planning to do a presentation on the history of potions. Vesta tells Ruru to rest assured, as they are not going to reveal any secret information, and the purpose of this presentation is to attract people who would like to participate in the project. Remmoru thinks that this is a great opportunity to do this, and he tells them to give it their best. Kabiru then states that he is not going to lose to Kuro Bay in this, and Ruru remembers that him and the weaponsmiths are planning to show their best works. At the event, Vesta mentions that they are competing to see which of their events gets more visitors, and later Ruru thinks that everyone seems excited about this. He then meets Shen in the hallway, and she leaves after telling Ruru to look forward to her project. Ruru hopes that it's not something sinister, and he remembers that Vora was planning to open a teppanyaki booth. He thinks that he will deal with that later, and he finds Shay in his office. She mentions that she would like to ask a favor of Roro, and she tells him to take her to Ingratia. The scene then cuts to them talking to another worlder Pizier named Yoshida in Ingratia, and Ruru tells him that they need his skills as a chef. He asks him to come to Tempest, and Yoshida states that he can't leave here, as he just started this calf and he has to repay all the people who helped him open. Shay asks him to reconsider, and he is taken in by her beauty. but he states that if they want to convince him, they will have to serve him a satisfactory dish. Ruru then tells Shay to go for it, and Shay then serves some rolled omelets to Yoshida. Yoshida tries them and he loves them, and he agrees to help them out as a favor. Ruru then thinks that he should also do something for the festival, and the scene cuts Tim Jam talking to a noble. The noble plans to open a brothel with slaves, and he wonders if Nalmayer would like to invest in this Jailmir. Asks him how much he will be paying the girls working there, and he states that there is no need to pay slaves. This tells Mijalmir that this guy is not a businessman, and he might not even know how much it costs to buy a high-class slave. He tells the noble that this is a good idea, but it might be a bit hard to procure slaves like that at this time. The noble mentions that he has an elven slave in mind, and Jailmi thinks that it's impossible to turn an elf who has citizenship into a slave, and he realizes that some organized crime syndicate might have captured one from the forest. He thinks that he doesn't want to get mixed up in this, and he tries to come up with an excuse to reject his offer. Raru then comes into the room, and the noble gets angry at him for interrupting his meeting. Ruru tries to leave thinking that Jailmir is busy right now, but the noble stops him and he wonders how Ruru plans to pay for his indiscretion in stopping his meeting. Ruru apologized, and the noble says a lot of rude things to him. Jem then tells him that he shouldn't be rude to the person that he owes his life to, and he kicks the noble out of the room. He mentions that he won't be doing any more business with him, and he tells him to never come here again. The noble then leaves in anger, and Ruru asks Enjalmir if it was all right for him to anger that noble Enjalmir, then tells him the entire situation. And he mentions that he wanted to cut ties with that noble for a long time. He then asks Ruru what brings him here, and Ruru mentions that he wants Magalmay's help with a job. And Jailmir tells him that the jobs that Ruru brings him are fascinating, but it takes a lot of work to prepare for them. Just like the fast food expansion project, Ruru mentions that about that project. He would like Jailmir to open a test location in his nation. First, and Jailmir agrees. Ruru asks him how the training of the chefs and the staff are going, and JM mentions that they are well trained. By now, Ree mentions that they should open a shop offering burgers, fries, and drinks in this case, and Jailmir likes the idea. He adds a few more items to the menu, and Ruru asks him if they have some available employees right now. Jim mentions that they can open up 20 locations with the employees he has available, and Ruru tells him to bring over 5 of his best employees. Jailmir asks him what he needs them for, and Ruru explains that a friend of his named Vora wants to open a teppanyaki booth at the festival. Jailmir starts sweating bullets hearing this, and he wonders if Ruru would be able to guarantee the safety of his employees. Ruru states that he can, and Jom trusts him with this, but he mentions that his employees might not be able to focus on their work if they are working alongside Vora. Ruru can understand this, and Jail mentions that things would be fine if Vora can assume another name for the duration of the festival. Ruru thinks that this is a good idea, and they agree to go with this. Maru then mentions that he will be giving a special bonus to those 5 employees, and he asks Jailmi to tell them that he will be counting on them. Jailmir then wonders why he has to be the one to deal with Vora, and he thinks that things have shifted to a whole other level. Now they're not the same as the time when Ruru saved him, and he thinks that he would have died on that day. But Ruru saved him, and since then he has decided to live his life without regrets. Ruru then gives Enjalmir all the details about the festival, and Jam thinks that many people would be coming to attend an event that large. He mentions that it's a good opportunity for a merchant like him, and Ruru tells him that he is still wavering on a few things regarding the festival, mentions that he wants something to serve as the main attraction of his nation, and he states that he is planning to turn his town into a health resort. They have their guest houses and lodging to welcome royalty, and they also have their hot springs, but they are lacking in the entertainment department. Jailmir thinks that Ruru shouldn't need anything else, but Riyar mentions that he wants something that everyone can enjoy. He states that they can try a fishing tournament in the mountains, a tour of the Jura forest with a guide, and a hunting event. He is thinking of making needed equipment available for renting to anyone interested, and Jailmir thinks that this is interesting, and it would be a hit with the nobles. Ruru then asks Magalmayr if he has any other ideas like this, and he mentions that his main goal is to want to make their guests return as repeat visitors. To make this happen, he wants to prep many activities to keep his guests engaged and interested, and Jem wonders how far ahead Rimuru is thinking. He mentions that theater and fighting arenas are popular forms of entertainment in Ingratia, and Ruru states that he has heard about the hero Masayuki of the fighting tournament. He has heard that Masayuki is known as the light speed and he is the dominating champion of the tournament. Jaimir mentions that he is a huge fan of Masayuki, and he states that he can tell Rimuru all about him. If he wants, he then tells Ruru a bunch of things about Masayuki, but we see that Rimuru is not really interested. Jaimir then apologizes for getting a little heated and Ruru mentions that he actually likes his ideas. He states that there is a vacant area of the town which they can turn into an opera house, and some might want to become playwrights. Thanks to this, he thinks that this could lead to some new forms of entertainment, and he ponders about the arena. He tells Enjalmir to arrange a battle tournament in Tempest, since he seems to know a lot about them, and Enjalmir mentions that he can't agree to something like this so easily. Ruru tells him that they are going to build the arena for him, and he will just have to look up the stuff needed for a show. Jaimir agrees to this, and he mentions that he will try to meet his expectations. He then thinks that Ruru really is a demon lord, and he realizes that assembling the stuff he needs should be a simple task. He thinks that it's an honor for him that he is relying on him for this, and he knows that this kind of opportunity only comes once in a lifetime. Raru then tells him that he is planning to build a coliseum capable of holding at least 50,000, and Jamie thinks that this is 5 times the capacity of the coliseum in Ingratia. Ruru explains that there will be some standing room sections and they will make it free of charge, and they can direct rich people to the reserved seats and charge them appropriately. He needs Enjalmir to figure out the ratios of these seat types, and Jem understands what Ruru wants to do here. Ruru mentions that when the stand room sections are all packed, a reserved seat would look more attractive, and Jaimir thinks that this is a different approach from the Colosseum in Gracia, which is solely for the entertainment of the upper classes. The aim here is to pack as much people as possible, and he thinks that the traffic of tens and thousands will also fill up the ends along the highway, and it would be a great way to advertise Tempests, food, and baths. The arena itself wouldn't need to make profit, and he states that Ruru must have planned this from the start. Ruru pretends that he did, but he thinks that he thought all of this on the fly. Jam mentions that they need to spread the word about this first, and Ruru states that he will be counting on JM for this. Jaimir then asks Ruru if he won't mind this tournament tuning out a loss, as long as it can attract people, and Ruru states that he is right. He mentions that Enjalmir is the only guy he can trust with this, and he then butters up Enjalmir some more, and he agrees to do this afterwards. Majalmir mentions that this will give Ruru a new way to use his healing potions, and he explains that since his potions can heal people completely, their competitors won't have to hold back. They can also be injured in one match and return as good as new in the next one. Ruru is surprised to hear this, but he pretends that he already thought of this, and Jelm mentions that he expected this much of Ruru. Ruru states that they can also show weapons and armors made in Tempest to adventurers, and GM mentions that they can have a state-run betting operation as well. Ruru states that they can rent out the arena for adventurer training when no events are planned, and Jaimir likes the idea, and he states that he will do his best to make this project a success. The scene then cuts to Ruru visiting Fuse, and Fuse is surprised to see him. They both sit down, and he apologizes to Ruru for not being able to hold back the Western Holy Church. Ruru mentions that there was nothing Fuse could have done about this, and he explains that a band called the 7 Even Days clergy was behind this whole ordeal. The church wouldn't have listened to him, no matter what he said, and Fuse thinks that the 7 Days clergy are the great heroes and guardians of humanity. Ruru mentions that they are, and he states that a lot of things happened. But now everything is fine, and the misunderstanding has cleared up. Fuse mentions that hearing this takes a load off his chest, and Ruru thinks that Fuse is a good guy for worrying about him. This much Ruru then gives him the invitation to the festival before leaving, and he mentions that they are going to celebrate his coronation as a demon lord and use this opportunity to advertise his town to the world. Fuse is surprised that Ruru is inviting someone like him, and Ruru mentions that the invitation for the King of Blow is also in that letter, and he tells Fuse to deliver it to him since a demon lord can't hand it to the king by hand. Fuse understands, and Raru tries to leave. But Fuse tells him that Grandmaster Yuki was worried about him, and he went through quite a lot to negotiate with the Western Holy Church, and he will be sure to tell him that everything worked out in the end. Ruru thinks that he should thank Yuki for worrying about him, and he states that he should invite him to the festival as well. Fuse is not sure if Yuki will attend, as he is a busy man and Ruru mentions that he can provide him an escort for coming to and from the event. He then hands an invitation letter for Yuki to Fuse, and he tells him to deliver it for him. Fuse understands and Ruru leaves after telling Fuse that Malene will be coming to this festival as well, and Fuse can't believe this. Thus, our episode concludes.